Chapter 32-23. Bai Feng chuckled. Priest Zhao, this is Zhang Ting from the White Tiger sect and Liang Pingyuan from the Flaming Sun sect. Chu Li nodded. Sorry for disturbing you, Priest Zhao. I'm sure both of you know why I'm here. We don't. Liang Pingyuan shook his head. Why is Priest Zhao looking for us? Chu Li narrowed his eyes and looked at him. I'm sure both of you have any news about our branch being destroyed? Or was it done by both of you? What do you mean? Liang Pingyuan smiled. We can't just say that it was us who did it, right? Chu Li said. My disciple's fatal injury was caused by the White Tiger sect's White Tiger Divine Fist and Flaming Sun Palm. Impossible, Zhang Ting scoffed. Chu Li smiled faintly and shook his head. Clan leader Zhang, we wouldn't have killed our disciple and framed you, would we? The Holy Church isn't that senseless. We didn't have to go through so much trouble to deal with you. We know very well whether we did it or not. We definitely didn't do it, Liang Pingyuan said. Chu Li looked at him deeply. You know very well whether we did it or not. Priest Zhao, do you think we did it? Zhang Ting asked calmly. Chu Li shook his head. I don't think it was you. Why do you think so? Zhang Ting scoffed. Chu Li smiled. You don't have the guts to do it. How arrogant of you! Zhang Ting sneered. Do you really think that we won't dare to offend the Holy Church of Light just because you're the number one among the four sects? If you really dare to do it, you should know what we'll do. Chu Li shook his head. Unless the three sects join forces, you won't dare to do it. However, there's no proof to say that someone is impersonating your sections. What do you mean? Zhang Ting frowned. Priest Zhao, are you asking us to prove our innocence? Of course. Chu Li nodded slowly. The one who died was our disciple, and the injury was caused by your sect's martial arts. Logically speaking, I should have attacked you directly, but for the sake of the bigger picture, I wouldn't have done it so simply. Priest Zhao, who do you think did it? Zhang Ting asked. Brother Zhang. Liang Pingyuan frowned and glared at Zhang Ting. Zhang Ting did not look at him. He only stared at Chu Li. Who could have framed us? Chu Li said. You must have a lot of enemies, right? Moreover, to be able to display such power from two sects' martial arts, it's definitely not an ordinary sect. Zhang Ting frowned and said, Fuang Zhao, please speak your mind. Chu Li smiled faintly. It's better not to say. Chu Li could not identify the culprit based on the disciple's injuries, so he knew that it was indeed the work of the White Tiger sect and the Flaming Sun sect. That was why he had asked the two of them to come over. Through the omniscient mirror, he could see through their thoughts and knew that they were not the culprit. Fortunately, they didn't have any treasures protecting them. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to see through their thoughts, and he would have to go through a lot of trouble. Zhang Ting frowned and remained silent. Liang Pingyuan could not help but snort coldly. Zhao Fuang, this matter was not done by us, so it has nothing to do with us. Why do you need us to help investigate the matter of your disciple being killed? Chu Li looked at Liang Pingyuan and said calmly, Your sect's martial arts are not taught to outsiders, right? Of course not. Liang Pingyuan snorted. Chu Li said, Then why were they killed by the Flaming Sun Palm? If your martial arts were taught to outsiders, you should be able to find out who it was taught to. This is the easiest way to find the culprit. You're not even willing to help when it's convenient? Zhao Fuang, this is not the attitude to ask for help, Liang Pingyuan said coldly. Chu Li looked at him calmly. Then should I kneel down and beg you, clan leader Liang? Zhang Ting said, This matter is indeed related to us. The culprit actually impersonated our two sects, which is a provocation. Even if Zhao Fuang did not say it, we must find out who it is. He gave Liang Pingyuan a look. Liang Pingyuan suppressed his surging anger, snorted coldly, and said no more. He was extremely dissatisfied with Chu Li's domineering attitude. It was as if he had become a disciple of the Holy Church of Light and was ordered around by them at will. Chu Li nodded. Thank you, clan leader Zhang. I'll wait for your good news. Zhao Fuang, just wait for the good news. Zhang Ting smiled. We will do our best and give Zhao Fuang an explanation as soon as possible. All right. Chu Li nodded casually. Zhang Ting and Liang Pingyuan fist saluted and left. After leaving the restaurant and walking on the bustling street, Zhang Ting turned to look at Liang Pingyuan. Brother Liang, why do you have to go against him? He's so young, but he's so arrogant. Liang Pingyuan scoffed. Zhang Ting shook his head. He's young, but no matter what, he's still a priest of the Holy Church of Light. His status is indeed higher than ours. Not only should we not look down on him because of his young age, but we should also pay more attention to him. He sighed helplessly. Zhao Dai had become a priest at such a young age. Not to mention those outside the Holy Church of Light, even those within the Holy Church of Light would not be convinced. This was human nature, and no one could avoid it. Because of this, it was easy to imagine that Zhao Dai would be ruthless to establish his authority and make others speechless. This Zhao Dai was not a kind person. Back then, he had killed everyone in Gale City. Now that he had become a priest, he would be even more ruthless. It was not wise to go against him head-on. Liang Pingyuan said, "He's too arrogant. He called us here and asked us to investigate the culprit. What kind of people are we? This matter needs to be investigated. He impersonated us and used our martial arts to kill a disciple of the Holy Church of Light. He's not an ordinary person." Zhang Ting's face darkened as he sighed. It's probably the reincarnation temple's doing. He framed us and provoked a civil war so that he could reap the benefits. Liang Pingyuan inhaled sharply. How vicious! If it weren't for Priest Zhao's patience, it would have been dangerous. Zhang Ting shook his head. If it were someone else, would they believe that our two sects are innocent? Maybe they didn't even ask us and directly attacked us. No matter how weak the Holy Church of Light is, it's not something we can fight against. Liang Pingyuan nodded slowly. The Radiance Clan incident was the Holy Church of Light's sore spot. The Holy Church of Light, which had always been proud, had been holding back their anger. As time passed, not only did their anger not dissipate, it became even more intense. This incident was exactly the same as what had happened to the Radiance Clan in the past. Seeing this, old and new grudges surged in their hearts. The Holy Church of Light was probably enraged and wanted to take revenge with interest. They had already made their move. Thinking of this, Liang Pingyuan felt a chill down his spine. If that were to happen, the entire martial arts world of the Great Li would be plunged into a sea of blood, and no one knew how many people would die. Do your best to investigate this matter. If you really can't find anything, don't force yourself, Zhang Ting said. He has already determined that we are not the murderers. He won't vent his anger on us just because he can't find the murderer. I'm just afraid that he's young and impetuous. Liang Pingyuan frowned. Zhang Ting said, he looks young and full of vigor, but his actions are calm and steady. To be able to become a law emperor, he's definitely not an ordinary person. Liang Pingyuan nodded. Through the omniscient mirror, Chu Li could clearly see what they were thinking. He frowned and pondered. He also suspected that the reincarnation temple was the doing of the martial arts world of the Qiu dynasty. Senior Bai, I'd like to rest here for 2 nights. Chu Li smiled. Bai Feng smiled sweetly. You're most welcome. Come with me. She got up and walked out of the house. She pushed open the door to the room next door and let him stay here. Chapter 32-25. The inner energy of the Heavenly Heart technique flowed continuously. His mind was calm, but there was a hint of anger. He had a greater ambition for the Holy Church of Light. He wanted to control the Holy Church of Light for his own use. Now that he had gained Sun Mingyue's full trust and made a few more contributions, his prestige in the church would increase. When that time came, His power would only be below Sunmingyue's. Once he said a word, the Holy Church of Light would obey him. With the Holy Church of Light's help, he would be able to do many things. Therefore, he regarded the Holy Church of Light as his own force. The sudden death of a branch made him extremely angry. It was as if his pet had been killed. He hated the murderer very much and wanted to destroy the murderer. Anger and calmness were originally opposites, but under the circulation of the heavenly heart technique, they were strangely compatible and were in a strange state. He suddenly felt that the world had suddenly become quiet. It was as if the world had stopped moving and time had stopped flowing. Everything was still, and his mind was exceptionally calm. He could do whatever he wanted. All restraints had been removed, and his mind had completely regained its freedom. With a flash of inspiration, he used the heavenly heart technique's inner energy to activate the peering technique. A cold aura flowed through his hand and into his mind. A distorted shadow suddenly appeared in front of him. This distorted shadow gradually became clearer, and he could clearly see who was inside and what was happening. As this scene appeared, the aura in his mind dissipated and his eyes became clear again. What he saw earlier was like a dream. He squinted his eyes. This was the peering technique under the star stone. It was indeed different from using the peering technique himself. It was a completely different situation. A bright moon hung high in the night sky, slowly sprinkling down its light. Everything around it became mysterious, as if there were countless secrets hidden in the dark that could jump out at any time. Ever since the Qiu dynasty and the Li dynasty stopped fighting, Falling Autumn City suddenly became prosperous. The trade between the two countries was reopened. Falling Autumn City was where the trade between the two countries was located. The trade that was affected by the war rebounded in retaliation, and it was several times more prosperous than usual. Falling Autumn City became prosperous in a short period of time. There was a big house on a street next to the central street. It was the Tiger Fury clan where the White Tiger sect was located. Even though it was midnight, the street was still bustling and brightly lit. However, the place where the Tiger Fury clan was located was quiet, as if the people had fallen asleep. 10 figures in dark gray clothes silently landed in the courtyard of the Furious Tiger Hall. Their footsteps were soundless and their clothes were soundless. They arrived outside a house as light as a feather. The 4 of them stood guard outside. 2 of them put their hands together and pressed on the door of the house. Soundlessly, they removed the door and moved it open. The remaining 4 people entered the house. 2 muffled groans could be heard from within the house. Then, silence returned and the 4 of them floated out. They each had their own roles, and they cooperated with tacit understanding. They dealt with the situation cleanly. The 2 Tiger Fury Hall disciples had already silently died. They entered another room, and then 2 more Tiger Fury Hall disciples silently died. "Who is it?" A shout suddenly resounded through the entire Tiger's Fury Hall. Suddenly, the lights were turned on. The large and quiet Tiger's Fury Hall suddenly became brightly lit. All the disciples ran out of the house, and more than 100 people surrounded the courtyard in the blink of an eye. The 10 men in gray were exposed to the light and were glared at by the crowd. They were ready to pounce on them at any time. 4 middle-aged men in white clothes slowly walked over. The crowd quickly made way for them. The 4 middle-aged men in white clothes split into 2 groups and stood on the left and right. Hall Master Zhang Ting walked out from the center. He was dressed in a loose nightgown and stared at the 10 men in gray with a gloomy expression. The 10 men in gray did not conceal their faces. They looked at Zhang Ting and the crowd calmly. Monk Ji Shan. Zhang Ting's expression was extremely gloomy. A tall and burly monk stood in the middle of the 10 men. His bald head gleamed under the light, and his eyes were bright like torches. He put his palms together calmly and suddenly smiled brightly. "Hall Master Zhang, sorry to disturb you." "What are you doing?" Zhang Ting said coldly. "Why are you killing the Tiger Fury Hall disciples for no reason?" "Hee hee, Hall Master Zhang, that's a funny question. Ji Shan's handsome face revealed a sarcastic smile. Isn't it obvious? We're here to kill and avenge the Qiu dynasty's soldiers. Are you trying to start a war again? Zhang Ting asked in a deep voice. We just stopped fighting and you're already provoking us again. Do you really want to fight to the death? We don't care what the army does. Ji Shan shook his head. But the Li dynasty's martial arts world can forget about this. We'll continue to kill until the Li dynasty's martial arts world admits defeat. How arrogant! Zhang Ting sneered. All right, the White Tiger sect will fight you to the end. Hall Master Zhang, you're the one who's arrogant, Ji Shan said with a smile. Do you think the White Tiger sect can afford to fight us? Today we'll let Hall Master Zhang know how powerful we are. Everyone, let's do it. As soon as he finished speaking, the 9 gray-robed men immediately pounced on the crowd and attacked first. Instantly, the shadows of swords and sabers flashed, fist force and palm wind whistled, and the battle became chaotic. From time to time, Tiger Fury Clan's disciples fell. Ji Shan stood where he was with a smile and looked at Zhang Ting. Since Zhang Ting did not move, he did not move. The other 9 men were like wolves that had entered a flock of sheep. They were invincible and no one could match them. In just a short while, 10 Tiger Fury Clan's disciples had fallen. Zhang Ting gritted his teeth and glared at Monk Ji Shan. Haitsong Mountain, Royal Blade Palace, come at me together. Yes. Monk Ji Shan pressed his palms together and smiled. Our 3 sects have joined forces. Do you want to join forces too? Won't the Holy Church of Light destroy you first? You did it! Zhang Ting shouted. You killed the Holy Church of Light's branch. At least you're not hopelessly stupid. Monk Ji Shan shook his head and sighed. Sigh, the world is like a wheel. Yin and yang coexist, and life and death go hand in hand. You don't have to worry too much. After the Tiger Fury Clan is destroyed, we'll frame the Holy Church of Light. What do you think will happen? Ha ha. He laughed heartily, looking extremely joyful. What a vicious method. Zhang Ting gritted his teeth and felt a chill run down his spine. As a Buddhist disciple, how could they use such a vicious method? Aren't they afraid of retribution? Life is death and death is life. The cycle of life and death is endless. Why do you need to be so stubborn? Monk Ji Shan shook his head. Don't worry. After you die, you'll only need to experience 9 reincarnations. You'll be reborn as a human. Don't be afraid. Zhang Ting glared at him and secretly channeled his energy. Once the Tiger Fury Clan was destroyed, they could frame the Holy Church of Light. The consequences could be predicted. Because the disciples of the White Tiger sect cultivated the White Tiger power, all of them were hot-tempered. They were like dry firewood that could be easily ignited. They were not as calm as Zhao Dave. Once they found out that the Holy Church of Light had killed them using martial arts, they would immediately take revenge. The Holy Church of Light would not be lenient either. A war between the 2 sects would greatly damage their strength, but the real culprit would be able to get away with it. When he thought about this, he felt angry and worried. He immediately let out a long whistle. The whistle spread out like a tidal wave. It could be heard in half of Falling Autumn City. However, Monk Ji Shan was calm. He shook his head and said, You want to ask them for help, don't you? How dare you? The Tiger Fury Clan isn't the only sect in Falling Autumn City. Zhang Ting scoffed. Monk Ji Shan shook his head and sighed. I'm really sorry. I haven't told you about this yet, clan leader Zhang. Actually, we're not the only sect. The Tian Luo sect and the Flaming Sun Palm have sent people to greet them. They can't even take care of themselves, so it's impossible for them to come and save you. You should just sweep away the snow in front of your own sect. Zhang Ting frowned and stared at him. Chapter 32-26. Monk Ji Shan smiled. Clan leader Zhang, I'm impressed. What's there to be impressed about me? Zhang Ting gritted his teeth and sneered. I'm all ears. He wanted to drag things out for a bit longer as there was still a glimmer of hope. Monk Zhishan sighed. If I were you, I wouldn't be able to keep my composure and watch my disciples fall. Zhang Ting scoffed. I'm no match for you. It's already a miracle that I can hold you back. I don't dare to hope for anything else. You're indeed a rare talent to be so rational and calm. Clan leader Zhang, I can't bear to send you into the cycle of reincarnation. Monk Zhishan shook his head and smiled. Why don't you submit to the reincarnation temple and become a layman disciple? You can cultivate the martial arts of our temple and another magical door will be opened in front of you. You'll realize that the world isn't what you see. It's not real. Humph. Do you think I can cultivate the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture if I submit to you? Zhang Ting scoffed. Monk Zhishan smiled. I can teach you the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture, but I'm afraid you don't have the qualifications. You can only cultivate the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture with the upper and middle root vessels. As long as I can teach it, I can cultivate it. I'm just afraid that the reincarnation temple won't dare to teach me. Haha, Monk Zhishan shook his head and said, Do you know that cultivating the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture will not only bring no benefits but will also bring harm to your life if you don't have the aptitude to do so? It's a pity that the world doesn't understand the painstaking efforts of my temple. Chi 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 chi. A shrill whistling sound was heard and several cold lights shot out from the center of the courtyard. After the cold lights shot out, a figure appeared in the center of the courtyard as if he had appeared out of thin air. He wore a green robe and had an ordinary appearance. Even his eyes were ordinary and did not have the clear and bright aura of a martial arts practitioner. The 9 middle-aged men in gray robes who were fighting did not manage to dodge the sudden appearance of the cold lights. Their instincts had just awakened when the cold lights arrived. Some of them reacted faster than their brains and avoided the vital parts of their bodies, while others did not have the talent to dodge. Bam 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 bam. The 9 middle-aged men in gray flew out and crashed into the walls. Some shattered the windows, some landed on the wall, some landed on the rockery, and some landed on the weapon rack. All of them vomited blood and were severely injured. 6 of the middle-aged men in gray had already died, and the other 3 had already lost the strength to fight. Although they were not in vital areas, the power of the saber was continuous and ever-changing, constantly destroying their internal organs and worsening their injuries. Dai Zhishan. Zhishan's smile froze as he glared at Chu Li coldly. Chu Li smiled and closed fist saluted. Li Chu Zhili smiled. Shan Zhi Chu, Chu of Li to Chu Chu Li said. Zhi Zhili, half to Tu of. Monk Zhishan glanced at the 9 middle-aged men in gray clothes on the ground and sneered. Zhao Fuang, you're really capable. Let's have a spar and see what skills you've gained. That's what I was thinking. Chu Li smiled and turned to look at Zhang Ting. Clan leader Zhang, clean up these people. Kill those who deserve to be killed and save those who need to be saved. I want to get to know Monk Zhishan better. Thank you, Holy King Zhao. Zhang Ting cupped his fist. Chu Li smiled and nodded. Suddenly, he threw a punch. Monk Zhishan seized the opportunity to appear behind Chu Li while he was speaking and was about to launch a sneak attack. However, Chu Li's divine light fist had already arrived. Ding! Monk Zhishan's full moon chakram, which was as black as ink, appeared in his sleeve. The full moon chakram blocked the punch and was then thrown out. Whoosh! The lunar chakram was like a bolt of black lightning. The fist force seemed to have made it exceptionally fast, and it instantly appeared in front of Chu Li. Chu Li flicked his finger. Ding! The full moon let out a clear ring and slowed down. Chu Li grabbed the lunar chakram and kept it in his sleeve. He smiled and said, "Thank you, monk. This is good stuff." Monk Zhishan waved his sleeves and a cold light flashed. The small sun chakram shot out. Its speed was faster than before, and it arrived in front of Chu Li in an instant. Chu Li flicked his finger again and accurately hit the sun chakram. The cold light disappeared and the shape of the sun chakram appeared. Then, it fell into Chu Li's hand. He kept it in his sleeve again and smiled at Monk Zhishan. Monk, do you have more? It'd be best if you have 2 more. Monk Zhishan looked at Chu Li solemnly and his heart sank. Almost no one could subdue the sun chakram. Even those whose martial arts skills were 2 levels higher than him would not dare to touch the sun chakram. The Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture's inner energy was extremely refined, and it would change as the sun chakram rotated. It was impossible to guard against it. Zhao De was able to subdue the sun chakram because he had also cultivated the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture. Moreover, he was able to grasp the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture's level and essence from his sun chakram. Although Chu Li looked relaxed, he was secretly groaning. The inner energy contained in the sun chakram was endless, and it was constantly changing. He could not defend against it at all. In just a short while, 6 waves of inner energy had already entered his body and were running amok. He quickly used the cloud slashing power to devour the inner energy. It was very difficult to do so, but he smiled calmly. Monk Zhishan, it seems like you haven't made much progress recently. You've really disappointed me. Monk Zhishan looked at the 3 middle-aged men in gray who were heavily injured by Zhang Ting and the others. He smiled calmly and said, "It's difficult to improve at this level of the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture. I can only polish it well and train my heart. I'm looking for an opportunity to break through, and it seems like you're my opportunity, Priest Zhao." Chu Li smiled. "Monk, what are you waiting for? Are you going to wait until they're all dead and you have nothing to worry about?" "That's right." Monk Zhishan bowed with pressed palms. "Priest Zhao is indeed wise." Chu Li shook his head. "A monk can't be so indifferent to human lives. Watch my fist." The cloud slashing power had finally devoured the 6 waves of inner energy. He could vaguely feel that he had made progress. His understanding of the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture seemed to have deepened, and it was even better than his own cultivation. This was a wonderful cultivation method. With this thought in mind, he asked, "Monk Zhishan, did you destroy the Holy Church of Light's branch?" "Priest Zhao, why ask when you already know the answer?" Monk Zhishan smiled. "What a pity. He originally planned to destroy the Holy Church of Light's branch and the White Tiger sect's Wrath clan. The 2 sects would have to fight each other even if they did not want to. He did not expect the Holy Church of Light to react so quickly and send Zhao De over. The most commendable thing was that Zhao De was able to keep his cool and did not act immediately. He also knew about the Holy Church of Light's Radiance clan. He knew that this was a scar that was the easiest to hurt. Unfortunately, God's will was not as good as his plan. They actually sent Zhao De over and ruined his plan. He wanted to kill Chu Li with a palm strike, so he slowly pushed out his palm. Chu Li threw out a divine light fist. Monk Zhishan suddenly disappeared and appeared behind Chu Li in the next moment. Chu Li swung his hands and 2 cold lights shot out. Monk Zhishan disappeared again in a flash, avoiding the blade light that was inches away from him. His senses were extremely sharp. Chapter 32-27. Swoosh swoosh. 2 soft whistles could be heard as the blades pierced through Monk Zhishan's clothes but were blocked by his inner armor. Bam! Monk Zhishan was sent flying by the blades and spat out a mouthful of blood in midair. He suddenly disappeared and evaded the other 2 blades. Chu Li squinted his eyes and held the star stone in his hand. A cold current flowed into his mind as he activated the nature restoration manifestation. Instantly, a scene appeared clearly in his mind and he threw another blade. As soon as Monk Zhishan appeared, the flying blade was already at his throat but was blocked by his left hand. His hand was as white as jade, and there was a red spot on his palm, as if it was stained with cinnabar. The flying blade hit the red spot and pierced into his left palm. However, it did not penetrate his throat and stopped in front of it. Bam! Monk Zhishan was sent flying again. He flew backward to neutralize the force of the flying blade. Not only was Chu Li's inner energy pure, but his cultivation level was also twice as high. His strength had also increased tremendously. The flying blade did not only contain inner energy, but also a strong external force. The combination of these two forces was shocking. Although he managed to block the flying blade, he could not block the force of the blade. Monk, you shall enter reincarnation today. Chu Li shook his head and smiled as he threw another blade. Monk Zhishan pulled the flying blade out of his left palm and put it in his pocket. He put his palms together, and although his palms were stained with blood, it did not affect the solemn and holy look on his face. He chanted the name of Buddha. Namo Amitabha. After he chanted the name of Buddha, his face suddenly aged. Wrinkles appeared and his skin loosened. It was as if he had suddenly turned from a young man to an old man. 300 to 400 years had passed in an instant. Only his eyes were clear and bright. They were so cold that no one dared to look at him directly. Chu Li frowned as he knew that Zhishan had performed another secret skill. The flying blade was thrown again. Swoosh! Monk Zhishan did not dodge the flying blade. Instead, he flicked his finger and the wind from his finger whistled like a flying blade. Ding! The flying blade suddenly bounced in the air and fell straight to the ground. Chu Li furrowed his brows as he saw an extremely refined and substantial finger force hit the flying dagger. This finger force surprised him. Not only did it require a pure finger force, but it also required precision. It was not easy to hit the thin tip of the flying blade. Chu Li shot out another energy blade. Bam! Monk Zhishan calmly shot out a finger and collided with the energy blade. Both of them dissipated. Before Chu Li could launch another attack, Monk Zhishan's finger force had already reached Chu Li's chest. Chu Li took a step to the side to avoid it and shot out an energy blade at the same time. Pung 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 pung, the blade chi collided with the finger force. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 blade chi had been shot out. Chu Li seemed to be competing with him. He kept shooting out energy blades faster and faster. Monk Zhishan's white eyebrows knitted together tightly. He had initially thought that the light blade would consume a lot of inner energy and that he would not be able to use it more than a few times. With his profound cultivation level, he would be able to suppress Chu Li and force him to leave. Unexpectedly, Chu Li's energy blades seemed to be endless. After almost 20 strikes, he did not show any signs of fatigue or emptiness. Instead, he became more energetic and seemed to be getting smoother and smoother. He was in a good state and his energy blades were getting faster and faster. Chu Li could indeed feel that the light blade was improving. It seemed to have found a strange state and his understanding of the light blade was getting deeper. His attacks were much smoother and faster than before. Moreover, the energy blades were getting more solid. Unknowingly, his light blade had reached the final level and was about to be perfected. He suddenly realized that the main reason was not the star stone but the completion of the great light scripture. It was more beneficial to his understanding of the light blade. As his divine light technique improved, so did his light blade. He even felt that his divine light fist had improved as well. If he continued to polish it, he would be able to reach another level and reach another level. Monk Zhishan suddenly disappeared and appeared on Chu Li's left side. 2 finger forces attacked Chu Li at the same time. However, Chu Li seemed to have predicted this. He took a diagonal step forward the moment Zhishan appeared, closing the distance between him and Monk Zhishan. At the same time, he evaded the finger force and threw out a divine light fist. Then, a petrifying finger silently shot out from his sleeve, followed by a flying blade. As soon as Monk Zhishan felt that something was wrong, his body froze and he could not move. Chu Li's blade was aimed at his throat. Swoosh! Monk Zhishan was sent flying. The flying blade pierced through his throat and blood spurted out before it hit the wall next to him. Chu Li was overjoyed and shot out another blade. To other people, a shot to the throat would be enough to kill them, but not to Monk Zhishan. Namo Amitba! A Buddhist chant that sounded like a bronze bell suddenly rang through the night sky, causing everyone's ears to go numb and their blood to boil. An old monk in a gray frock silently appeared beside Monk Zhishan and picked him up before disappearing. Chu Li's expression changed slightly. He suddenly disappeared and appeared at the top of falling Autumn City in the next moment. The old monk in the gray frock had white eyebrows and beard. He flew across the night sky like a crane and flew over the top of falling Autumn City. Swoosh! Chu Li shot out a flying blade. The old monk in the gray frock spread out his wide robe sleeves and shielded himself and Monk Zhishan. The flying blade shot into the monk's sleeve and fell down without a sound. When Chu Li shot out a second blade, the old monk was already 100 meters away. Chu Li disappeared in a flash and appeared in front of the old monk in the next moment. He threw out a punch. Bang! The old monk had an ordinary appearance. His eyebrows were white and his face was white as snow. He looked a little strange, but he was calm and elegant like a spirit crane. His speed was surprisingly fast as he extended his palm to catch Chu Li's punch. Both of them took a step back and were evenly matched. Chu Li frowned and threw out another punch. However, the old monk dodged it and skimmed to the side. He did not want to fight Chu Li. Chu Li disappeared in a flash and appeared in front of him again. He threw out another divine light fist. This punch was too fast and Chu Li appeared out of nowhere. The old monk could not dodge it even if he wanted to, so he could only take it head-on. Bang! The old monk's robe fluttered and he finally took a step back. Chu Li waved his hands and shot one blade at the old monk and the other at Monk Zhishan. Monk Zhishan had already fainted, but Chu Li could feel that he was full of vitality and was no longer in danger. It was obvious that he had taken the spirit pill. Chu Li suddenly hesitated. He held the star stone in his hand and his senses were exceptionally sharp. He suddenly felt that he needed to rely on Monk Zhishan to break through the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture. If he killed him now, he would be cutting off a part of his opportunity. Who are you? Tell me your Dharma name. Chu Li threw out another divine light fist and scoffed. The old monk dodged the two blades and shook his head. I'm Yuan Wu. Chu Li frowned. Yuan Wu, you must be more than 100 years old, right? The old monk shook his head and smiled. I'm 80 this year. You're so old at 80? Chu Li said as he threw out a punch. The old monk answered while dodging. I have an understanding of Buddhism, which is why I'm in a state of loneliness. I can only regain my youth after I leave. Chu Li scoffed. If the reincarnation temple wants to go to war with the Holy Church of Light, then let's fight. Priest Zhao, you've misunderstood. The old monk said gently, all of this is an act of kindness. Our temple has no intention of going to war with the Holy Church of Light. This is a personal grudge, there's no need to involve both sections. Chu Li sneered. If it goes smoothly, it's the reincarnation temple's trip. If it doesn't, it's a personal matter. You guys are really wishful thinking. Sigh. The old monk Yuan Wu shook his head. I don't lie. Let's go to the Great Light Peak and explain this personally. That's great, Chu Li said. He was filled with killing intent and decided to go to the Qiu dynasty. Chapter 32-28. Chu Li stopped and frowned at him. All right, we'll wait for you at the Great Light Peak. If no one from your temple comes, don't blame us for taking revenge. You killed 30 of my men and I'll kill 60 of your men. I'll report to the Peak Lord. Yuan Wu pressed his palms together and left. Chu Li stared at Yuan Wu's back and frowned. He then appeared outside Bai Feng's room and knocked on the door. Bai Feng called out, "Come in." Chu Li pushed the door open and entered. A faint fragrance wafted into his nose. Bai Feng was standing in front of the window. The window was opened and the night breeze lifted the curtains, ruffling Bai Feng's hair. Her white clothes fluttered and her hair danced playfully. She turned around and looked at Chu Li. "How's the situation over there?" Chu Li replied, "It's settled, but someone saved Monk Zhishan." Bai Feng came to the stool and gestured for him to sit. "What about the others?" "They've been killed." Chu Li frowned. Royal Blade Palace and Haitsong Mountain were among the 30 masters. It seems like they're working together to weaken the martial arts world of the Li dynasty. We have to be careful. Bai Feng nodded. The martial arts world of the Li dynasty is scattered, but they're united. We have to be careful. She then chuckled. "Priest Zhao, you've saved the branches of our 3 sections. We have to thank you." Chu Li shook his head and smiled without saying a word. He had used the Star Stone to peek into Monk Zhishan's movements. They had split into 3 groups and attacked them one by one. Logically, they should have been able to destroy the 3 branches. Even if they could not, they would have been heavily injured. His appearance ruined Zhishan's plan. Not only did they not succeed, but they were also almost completely wiped out. Other than Monk Zhishan, the rest of the 30 masters were killed by him. This time, he had made a huge enemy of the martial arts world of the Qiu dynasty. 30 grandmasters was not a small number. Liang Pingyuan and Zhang Ting strode in with the sound of footsteps. They bowed respectfully as soon as they entered. Chu Li returned the gesture with a fist salute and smiled. "You don't have to do this, clan leaders. We're all from the martial arts world of the Li dynasty. We should help each other when we're being plotted against by the martial arts world of the Qiu dynasty. It's our duty. Holy King Zhao's bearing is outstanding, we are ashamed." Zhang Ting shook his head and smiled. "If it wasn't for Holy King Zhao, we would have been dead." Liang Pingyuan nodded slowly. At first, he was extremely dissatisfied with Chu Li's arrogance at such a young age, but in the face of his life-saving grace, he had nothing to say. Chu Li had the right to be arrogant, but he could only blame himself for not having enough cultivation to be on par with Chu Li. Chu Li replied, "They're extremely sinister. They destroyed our branch first before destroying your branch." Everyone was silenced because of what happened to the Radiance clan back then. The Qiu dynasty's martial arts world will then reap the spoils of war and reap the spoils of war. They are evil. Liang Pingyuan gritted his teeth. "We must take revenge." Zhang Ting frowned and pondered. His temperament was calm and steady. Even though he cultivated the white tiger power, it did not change his temperament at all. Although he was furious, he was not in a hurry to make a move. He needed to plan before making a move. Otherwise, it would be easy for others to take advantage of him. Not only would he fail to take revenge, he would also die. "What do you think, Holy King Zhao?" Zhang Ting looked at Chu Li. Chu Li took the teacup from Bai Feng and took a sip. He said slowly, "They used a surprise attack, that's why we suffered such a heavy loss. They must be prepared now, so it'll be difficult for us to take revenge." "That's right." Zhang Ting nodded. "They'll definitely increase their vigilance, and even withdraw their disciples. Are we just going to let it go?" Liang Pingyuan was displeased. He could not take this lying down. Flaming Sun sect had a bad temper due to their cultivation technique, so he could not take this lying down. Chu Li shook his head. "No matter what, we can't let it go. I plan to enter the Qiu dynasty and turn them upside down. I'll let them know the consequences of angering us." "You're going alone." Liang Pingyuan was stunned. Chu Li nodded slowly. "I'm enough." "Well." Liang Pingyuan shook his head. "Although you're powerful, the Qiu dynasty's 4 sects are also powerful people. Moreover, they're united, so they'll definitely think of ways to kill us. I'm afraid." He was not optimistic about Chu Li's decision. No matter how powerful he was still alone. Although a top-notch master could fight a group of ordinary masters, Chu Li was not invincible. It might be possible if the saint, Sun Mingyue, went. Unfortunately, Sun Minghui dared not go to the Qiu dynasty, or else the enlightened masters of the Qiu dynasty would attack. Zhang Ting said, "If we launch a surprise attack, it won't be too difficult to eliminate the 4 sects branches in Duanli City." "That's right, let's eliminate the branches in Duanli City first." Liang Pingyuan scoffed. "I'll ask for a group of masters from the sect. We'll eliminate them even if we have to attack them by force. We'll destroy the Qiu dynasty's prestige." Duanli City was the northernmost city of the Qiu dynasty. Its location and status were similar to Falling Autumn City. It was also a prosperous border town, only 100 miles away from Falling Autumn City. Zhang Ting nodded slowly. "I'll also ask for masters from the sect. Zhao Priest, let's do a 4 sects joint operation, what do you think?" Chu Li smiled. "That's for the best. I'm just afraid that your sect won't agree." "I'll do my best," Zhang Ting said. Chu Li fist saluted. "Then I'll wait for your good news. We'll send the message immediately. Goodbye." The 2 men fist saluted and left. They could not wait any longer. The Qiu dynasty's martial arts circle in Duanli City would soon be prepared and might even send reinforcements. The sooner they acted, the easier it would be. The longer they delayed, the more reinforcements from Duanli City would arrive, and it would be harder for them to succeed. In the early morning, Chu Li performed the Divine Void Light technique and arrived outside the Divine Light Basilica. There was no one in the basilica. When he came outside, he saw another girl in green on duty. When she saw him, she looked at him in surprise. Chu Li was very famous in the Holy Church of Light, and he was the easiest to recognize. He was considered the ugliest person in the Holy Church of Light. Even those who had never seen him before could recognize him. When Chu Li saw that the girl in green looked unfamiliar, he fist saluted. "Is the saint here?" "The saint isn't here yet." The girl in green shook her head. "Is there anything urgent that I need to report?" Chu Li nodded. "That's for the best. I'll have to trouble you, senior sister." The girl in green pursed her lips and smiled. She was a little shy and reserved. She left the basilica lightly and soon entered the strong wind. In the blink of an eye, she disappeared. A moment later, the girl in green reappeared and curtsied. "Priest Zhao, please follow me." Chu Li nodded and followed the young lady in green as they circled around the mountain peak. When they arrived at the other side of the mountain peak, they arrived at a simple courtyard under the morning sun. Sun Minghui was dressed in a loose white training outfit and was cultivating. Her training clothes were loose, but the waist and the cuffs were tucked in, so it didn't look cumbersome. In this way, her waist looked especially slender, and it was hard to believe that a person with such a figure actually had a martial arts skill that could suppress all the heroes in the world. "You may leave." Sun Minghui waved her hand. The girl in green looked at Chu Li in surprise and curtsied before leaving. Chapter 32-29. When he grows up, the situation will be set. It'll be useless even if he comes out. Xiao Shi shook her head. "If you want to fight, you have to do it early." Chu Li smiled. "There's no rush." Xiao Shi frowned as she stared at him. Xiao Qi stopped her sword and sat down to look at him. The 2 ladies felt that he was certain that he was hiding something from them. Chu Li smiled. "I've already made arrangements. When he grows up and wants to come out, it won't be too late for us to act then." "What arrangements?" Xiao Qi asked. Chu Li said, "I've sent some men to various residences, the Secret Guardians Hall, and the Imperial Palace. In another 2 years, we'll be able to advance further. It'll be easier for us to fight then." More than half of Heavenly Demonic Sect's disciples had arrived in the Ji dynasty. A group of Crouching Bull Mountain's disciples were scattered all over Fairy's capital, slowly weaving a large net. Through the High Duke's public house and the startling Cloud Association, he slowly weaved another net. He spread his tentacles everywhere under the net. Once he activated it, he would be able to topple mountains and overturn seas. He had the confidence to do so. No matter how powerful Lu Yurong or the secret guardian's hall was, he was confident that he would win. In this way, it was no different than covering the crown prince's eyes and ears, making it difficult for him to act. Once the mysterious pavilion's pavilion master died, he would be avenged. If King Ping kept his promise, he would secretly support him. This move was left for the last crucial moment. Although he did not make a clear move, he had been continuously weaving one net after another. Under the two ladies' relentless pursuit, Chu Li revealed a part of it. Only then did the two ladies let out a sigh of relief. Their anxiety was alleviated. Don't leave the imperial residence this month. After Chu Li held the star stone and performed the heaven-peaking skill, he solemnly said to the two ladies, "Don't go even if there's a hunting ceremony. Close the gate." "What's the matter?" Xiao Shi was surprised. "Did you see something?" Chu Li nodded. "The heaven-peaking skill." Xiao Shi curiously asked, "Are we in trouble?" "You're not in trouble, but the residence is." Chu Li frowned. "Ask Senior Shen to come back." From what he knew, Shen Yinghu had been staying at Snow Lunar Pavilion for a while, afraid that the other sects would trouble Snow Lunar Pavilion. "All right, I'll ask Senior Shen to come back." Xiao Shi nodded. Chu Li fixed his eyes on Shao Qi. Xiao Shi rolled her eyes at him, stood up and said, "All right, you two, hurry back to your own courtyard. Don't be an eyesore here. I'm going to start cultivating." Chu Li smiled and stood up to hold Shao Qi's hand. Shao Qi struggled a little but to no avail. She gave up and allowed Chu Li to pull her hand into his courtyard. Then, they closed the door and went into the house. Soon, a faint moaning sound could be heard from the house. Chu Li felt refreshed and satisfied as he returned to the branch in Falling Autumn City. The corpses had already been removed and the branch was empty except for the 6 disciples of the Holy Church of Light and the altar leader, Shi Zonggu. Shi Zonggu was sitting in the hall with a cold face, feeling vexed. Because the weather was too hot, the corpses could not be preserved for too long. They could only be cremated and buried. Looking at the disciples of the branch who had been burned to ashes, his anger surged. It was as if he could see the disciples of the branch laughing at his incompetence. They couldn't do anything to the murderer and couldn't even find out who the murderer was. Letting the murderer go free was the biggest insult to the Holy Church of Light. On the other hand, the priest whom he had high hopes for had disappeared. He had not seen him until now. Priest Zhao's speed was extremely fast, far beyond his imagination. However, he only took a glance and then ignored him. It was as if he had disappeared. There was no trace of him investigating the case. How could he be a priest with such behavior? Suddenly, footsteps were heard. Chu Li slowly walked into the basilica. When Shi Zonggu looked up and saw him, he stood up and saluted before sitting down without saying a word. Chu Li sat opposite him. "Altar leader Shi, what do you have to say?" "I have nothing to say," Shi Zonggu said angrily. "Priest, you're not even in a hurry to investigate the case. Why should I be?" Chu Li shook his head. It seemed that Shi Zonggu was still not convinced. He still had a long way to go to intimidate everyone as a priest. This was a great opportunity. His face darkened. "I've found out that it was Reincarnation Temple's monk Zhishan who led the other 2 sects to do this." "It's them?" Shi Zonggu was stunned. He frowned. "It should be the White Tiger sect and the Flaming Sun sect, right? Did they push the blame to the Reincarnation Temple? That must be the case. How despicable!" In terms of hatred, Shi Zonggu hated the White Tiger sect and the other 2 sects more than the 4 sects of the Qiu dynasty. They were enemies with the 4 sects of the martial arts world of the Qiu dynasty. Their life and death battles were up to fate. However, the White Tiger sect and the other 2 sects had gone too far. They had destroyed the Radiance clan of Gale City in one night. This was a scar that could not be erased. Chu Li said, "Monk Zhishan and the others came last night and admitted to it. Bring the disciples and leave Falling Autumn City. I'm going to take action." Zongu gritted his teeth. The reincarnation temple is so cruel. I'll stay and help them kill a few more martial arts masters of the Qiu dynasty. Chu Li sized him up and shook his head. Zongu was furious. Why? Do you think I'm useless? Chu Li said, your martial arts skills are only average. More importantly, your light body technique isn't good enough. If you really go to the Qiu dynasty's territory, how are you going to escape if you're surrounded? Priest, you underestimate me. Zongu was unconvinced. In terms of light body technique, I'm one of the best in the church. If that's the case, then let's take action immediately, Chu Li said. To Duanli City. We're leaving now? Yes. All right. Zongu nodded. Chu Li stood up and walked out. Zongu followed closely behind him. After they left Falling Autumn City, they used light body technique to travel more than 100 miles and arrived at another big city. The architectural style of this big city was similar to that of Falling Autumn City. Falling Autumn City was originally a city of the Qiu dynasty, so there was not much difference. Walking on the streets of Duanli City felt no different from being in Falling Autumn City. There were many people from the Li dynasty in the city. Most of them were merchants who came to trade. Since the two countries had stopped fighting each other, people from both countries could enter each other's cities. As long as they did not cross the line, the guards in the city would not interfere. Chu Li and Zongu went straight to the branch of the reincarnation temple, Jiren Temple. Jiren Temple was located in the east of Duanli City. It covered an area of 100 acres and was not considered too big. However, the temple was full of incense and was bustling with pilgrims. As a branch of the reincarnation temple, Jiren Temple had a high prestige. They worshipped Mahamayuri and had many believers. Chu Li and Zongu were obviously from the Li dynasty based on their attire, so they stood out among the crowd. However, the two of them entered the temple calmly and followed the worshippers inside until they reached the second courtyard and arrived at the main hall. Zongu turned to look at Chu Li. His original plan was to sneak in and kill them one by one without anyone knowing. He wanted to weaken the strength of the temple as much as possible. By the time they found out, most of the people would be dead, which would be the best. He did not expect that Zhao Dai would insist on coming in openly and openly. He wanted to fight his way to the door. This was indeed in line with the style of a young man who was intoxicated with success. Being unbridled and ostentatious would make things even more difficult. He might even stumble. He did not think much of it but did not try to persuade him. He knew that it would be useless. Zhao Dai would not listen to his advice and would do whatever he wanted. Chu Li scoffed. Disciples of the Reincarnation Temple, come out. Zhao Dai of the Holy Church of Light is here. His voice was like a bronze bell that resounded through the entire Jiren Temple. The surrounding people looked at him in surprise. They all looked at him as if he was a lunatic. Chapter 32:30. Namo Amitabha. A Buddha's name rose slowly. It was calm and peaceful, and the worshippers made way for it. A gray-robed old monk slowly walked over, followed by 6 young monks. They were full of energy and spirit, and their eyes flashed so brightly that no one dared to look at them directly. The gray-robed old monk was tall and thin, and his snow-white eyebrows drooped to the corner of his eyes. They were long and bright, just like the god of longevity. His face was kind and gentle, and he looked very amiable. He slowly walked to Chu Li, pressed his palms together, and said calmly, "Almsgivers, you're too kind." Chu Li pressed his palms together and smiled. "Are you a disciple of the Reincarnation Temple?" "I'm a disciple of the Reincarnation Temple." The old monk pressed his palms together and nodded. "May I know why you're here?" Chu Li said, "I'm sorry, your temple sneaked an attack on our 4 sects and killed 30 people from our branch. None of them survived. As a priest of the Holy Church of Light, I had no choice but to offend you." "The Holy Church of Light?" The old monk looked at the two calmly, as if he was compassionate. Chu Li smiled. The Holy Church of Light has always been compassionate, unlike your temple. You say that you're compassionate, but your actions are more vicious than anyone else's. Don't worry, monk, I won't kill you. I'll only cripple your martial arts. I'll start with the people next to me. As soon as he finished speaking, without waiting for the 6 monks behind the old monk to speak, he swung his arms, and 6 energy blades slashed across. Bang, 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 bang. The 6 monks flew out at the same time. They widened their eyes in the air and stared at Chu Li, unwilling to give up. They landed heavily on the courtyard wall, and slid down softly, lying at the foot of the wall, unable to move. They were holding their dantian in their lower abdomen, and their breaths were weak. Chu Li's 6 blades had accurately struck their dantian, and directly destroyed their cultivation. It would be difficult for them to cultivate again. The energy blades had directly destroyed their meridians, and it would not be easy to repair them. Chu Li calmly glanced at the 6 people, and then at the surrounding worshippers who were as silent as cicadas. Finally, his gaze fell on the old monk, and he smiled. "Do you have anything to say, monk?" "Namo Amitabha." The old monk's snow-white eyebrows moved slightly. He chanted the name of Buddha and sighed. "Benefactor, you are too unreasonable. Even if our temple has offended you, why don't you find the person who offended you? Why must you vent your anger on other innocent people?" Chu Li laughed out loud. "You should be asking the dead disciples of our branch instead. What crime did they commit? When did they offend Monk Zhishan of the Reincarnation Temple? Since you are so extreme, I can only offend you." The old monk shook his head and sighed. He raised his voice and said, "Where are the Dharma protectors? Here." Amidst the thunderous bellows, 10 middle-aged monks dressed in gray monk robes descended from the sky. They swept past the pilgrims and nodded. "This is a greeting to the Reincarnation Temple. I, Zhao Dai, have always done things this way. If I kill 30 of our people, the Reincarnation Temple will lose 60 or even 90 of their people. This is how I do things." As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared in a flash. The next moment, he appeared in a basilica and shot out his light blade. Before the monks who were sitting on cattail hassocks could react, the flying blades had already landed on their bodies and destroyed their cultivation levels one by one. Then, he appeared in a few houses again and destroyed all of them regardless of their cultivation levels. In the blink of an eye, the huge Jiren temple had been completely destroyed by him. The white-browed monk in front of him did not know martial arts, so he could not be destroyed. "So," Chu Li looked at him with a smile. "Do you have anything to say?" "I can only advise almsgiver Zhao that there is no end to the sea of bitterness, but the shore is at the end." The old monk sighed. "Otherwise, I'm afraid you won't live long." "Ha!" Chu Li laughed out loud. "Won't live long? How arrogant! I'd like to see what the Reincarnation Temple is capable of. Farewell." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left the Jiren temple. The devotees watched them leave with a look of surprise and pity. Such an arrogant guy would not live long. The Reincarnation Temple would definitely kill him. No matter how powerful he was, he would not be able to escape the Reincarnation Temple's pursuit. Shizonggu followed Chu Li out of the Jiren temple. As they walked on the street, he frowned and asked, "Priest, why didn't you just kill them to avenge the branch disciples?" His tone was firm and he was very angry. None of the 30 disciples from the branch survived. Such viciousness was intolerable. Shizonggu wanted to kill all the monks in the Jiren temple. Even if there were more than 40 of them, there were only 10 grandmasters among them. Even killing all of them would not be enough to appease his hatred. Chu Li glanced at him and shook his head. "Yesterday, I've already killed 30 grandmasters and only Monk Zhishan managed to escape. There's no need to kill the rest. Just cripple their martial arts and weaken their strength." "Priest, didn't you say that you want to take revenge several times over?" There are different types of revenge. Killing them directly and crippling their martial arts have different consequences. Chu Li shook his head. For the sake of the bigger picture, it's best to cripple their martial arts. There's no need to kill them all. He would not be lenient to those who came to kill him. He would kill those who came to him on their own. However, he would not be so ruthless to those who came to him personally. It was enough to cripple their martial arts and eliminate the threat. I didn't expect the priest to be so benevolent. Shizonggu scoffed. Chu Li gave him a sidelong glance. Shizonggu shuddered and had goosebumps all over his body. Only then did he remember that Chu Li's methods were extremely ruthless. When he was still a branch leader, he had dared to kill an altar leader. Shizonggu coughed softly and averted his gaze, not daring to meet his eyes. Chu Li scoffed. Next, the branch of Haitsong Mountain. Chapter 32-31. The Haitsong Mountainside Courtyard was located in the center of Duanli City, where the wealthy gathered. It was sparsely populated and was filled with tall mansions. When they glided into the Haitsong Mountainside Courtyard, 40 Haitsong Mountain disciples were practicing their swordsmanship. The gleam of their swords shone brightly in the courtyard. There were only 40 people, but it was as awe-inspiring as an army. As expected of Haitsong Mountain, Shizonggu shook his head. In terms of swordsmanship, although the Holy Church of Light had the Divine Light Sword technique, not many of them had mastered it. The Divine Light Sword technique was easy to practice but difficult to master. It was grand and imposing, and one would not be able to unleash its power without sufficient inner energy. Therefore, the disciples of the Holy Church of Light usually cultivated the swordsmanship of other sections. Currently, the disciples of the Holy Church of Light mostly cultivated the less ultimate sword. It was exquisite and powerful, and it was said that Priest Zhao had obtained it. When Chu Li glided down, he waved his hands. He was too lazy to speak and did not announce his name. Streaks of invisible blades shot out. When the 10 Haitsong Mountain disciples were sent flying, they reacted and swung their swords at Chu Li and Shizonggu. Chu Li glided like a willow in the wind. He retreated when they advanced and advanced when they retreated. He maintained a distance of 2 swords between him and them. It was neither too long nor too short. He waved his hands continuously, not missing a single one of them. Shizonggu suddenly felt a tinge of sympathy for these Haitsong Mountain disciples. Their enemies were right in front of them, yet they could only watch helplessly as they could not touch them. The feeling of despair and fear must be terrible. Thinking of this, Shizonggu felt extremely satisfied. Shizonggu shook his head. This group of Haitsong Mountain disciples risked their lives. Even if they were no match for the enemy, they still charged forward with all their might. It was not a wise decision to not think about how to save their lives when they had no way to fight back. However, without this spirit, it would be difficult for them to form an intimidating force. Chu Li glided to his side. Let's go. Shizonggu then realized that while he was distracted, all the Haitsong Mountain disciples had fallen. None of them were left standing. Chu Li had already glided out of the side courtyard. He followed the main street and headed west toward the side courtyard of Royal Blade Palace. Shizonggu did not say anything else as he followed closely behind Chu Li. He watched as Chu Li effortlessly crippled all the disciples from Royal Blade Palace's side courtyard. Shizonggu did a quick count and realized that there were only 3 Grandmasters and 2 Grandmasters in Haitsong Mountain's side courtyard and Royal Blade Palace's side courtyard respectively. Both of them were far weaker than Jiren Temple. After Chu Li left the side courtyard of Royal Blade Palace, he headed toward the southern gate of Duanli City. Shizonggu was startled and asked, Dharmaraja, are we not going back? Chu Li cast a sidelong glance at him. Where are you going? Not Falling Autumn City? There's no rush. Let's kill some more, Chu Li said. Where are we going? Shizonggu asked. North of Duanli City is Bright Wave City, right? Chu Li asked. Yes. Shi Zonggu said, Bright Ray City is 200 li away, but what is Dharmaraja doing there? Chu Li burst into laughter. What do you think? Shi Zonggu was a bit hesitant. You can't be thinking of crippling the experts of Bright Ray City, right? Chu Li nodded. Dharmaraja, please reconsider. Shi Zonggu hurriedly said. Chu Li frowned at him. Shi Zonggu said, Dharmaraja, we've already crippled the experts of Duanli City, which is considered as avenging the disciples of the branch. They have nothing to say since they're not as skilled as us. However, if we go to Bright Wave City again, we'll go overboard. Chu Li burst into laughter. Why would we go overboard with them? Shi Zonggu had already understood the saint's intentions. She did not want to start a full-scale war with the martial arts world of the Qiu dynasty. After all, they had just caused a huge ruckus with the prophecy pavilion. Crippling all the experts of Duanli City was considered revenge for the destruction of the branch. However, if they crippled the experts of Bright Wave City as well, it would be a declaration of war. If they wanted to start a full-scale war, the consequences would be too severe. Although he could not wait for the Holy Church of Light to destroy the Reincarnation Temple, Royal Blade Palace, and Hai Tsong Mountain, after venting his anger, he was no longer so radical. He knew that the saint was in a difficult position, so it was not appropriate for them to start a war. Shi Zonggu asked, Should we ask the saint for her opinion? This matter has been handed over to me. Chu Li shook his head. You can go back first. Shi Zonggu sighed. Dharmaraja, if we really cripple the experts of Bright Wave City, they'll definitely take revenge. They'll follow the Dharmaraja's example and send a few top-notch experts to the Li dynasty to cripple the disciples of our branches. So what? Chu Li said calmly. It depends on their abilities. If they cripple us, we'll cripple them too. Let's see who can last until the end. There's no need to say anything more, you can go back first. He waved his hand and left like a cloud. Although he looked slow, his speed was incredibly fast. Before Shi Zonggu could react, he had already disappeared from the city walls. Shi Zonggu's expression changed. Finally, he stomped his feet and turned to leave. He wanted to go to the branch to send a message to the Great Light Peak and report this matter to the saint. Chu Li then entered Bright Wave City and crippled the outer courtyard of the Reincarnation Temple and the other 3 sections. There were fewer grandmasters in Bright Wave City than in Duanli City. Duanli Town had the most martial arts masters. After all, it was the first line of defense for the Li dynasty. The 30 grandmasters that he had killed in Falling Autumn City were all from Duanli Town. On the other hand, Mingyang City was much weaker. Each side courtyard only had 1 grandmaster. After he chose Bright Wave City, he headed south again and chose 4 more cities in one go. However, there were few results in the end. He felt bored and did not bother to go anymore. Instead, he returned to Falling Autumn City. When he returned to Falling Autumn City, the sun was already setting and the lanterns were lit. The branch was brightly lit, but there were not many people. It was desolate and lonely. Chu Li appeared in the main hall in a flash. Sun Mingyue, who was dressed in white, was sitting elegantly in an armchair. She seemed to be deep in thought. She looked like a white jade statue with a gentle luster. Chu Li fist saluted and sat opposite her. Sun Mingyue looked up at him without saying a word. Chu Li smiled. Does the saint think that I'm too risky? It's a very risky move. Sun Mingyue frowned. If it's not what you think and they avoid you to attack the branch on the mainland, it'll be very troublesome. She knew what Chu Li was thinking. After his provocation, the 3 sects would have to get rid of him first before taking revenge on the disciples of the Holy Church of Light's branches. Chu Li said, Only the brave will win. We'll see who's more stubborn and crazy. I don't think the Reincarnation Temple and Hai Tsong Mountain will dare to fight us head-on. If we can't scare them this time, it'll be more troublesome. Other than the Qiu dynasty, The Ji dynasty and the Zheng dynasty will not let go of this opportunity. They'll attack us. Sun Mingyue sighed. I'll ask Priest Lu to help you. Chu Li shook his head. Too many people will only be a burden. Sun Mingyue stared at him for a while and nodded slowly. Fine, we'll do as you say. If things go south, we'll retreat. Yes. Chu Li smiled. The saint should also ask the branches to be more vigilant in case someone tries to take advantage of the situation. Sun Mingyue nodded. She knew what Chu Li meant. He was worried that someone would impersonate the Reincarnation Temple and Haizong Mountain's Imperial Blade Palace to attack the Holy Church of Light's branches and frame them. It would be difficult for the Holy Church to figure out the truth, and they would be exhausted. Sun Mingyue pondered. Monk Zhishan is the youth champion of the Reincarnation Temple, but the previous generation of disciples in the temple have not completely retired. There are still a few top-notch masters who are better than Zhishan. You must be careful. Chu Li smiled. I wanted to see the Reincarnation Temple's masters. Chapter 32-32. After Sun Mingyue left, Chu Li also left the empty branch and returned to the imperial residence of King An. Under the moonlight, the imperial residence of King An was silent. Even though it was still early in the night, the people in the residence had already rested. Chu Li sat in his courtyard and felt that the atmosphere in the imperial residence of King An was strange. The people in the mansion seemed to have lost their spirit and were listless. They could only live day after day in a daze without hope. An imperial residence without a male master was destined to decline. There was no hope for it to rise again, so the people were not motivated. Chu Li shook his head. There was nothing he could do in this situation. No matter how capable he was, it was impossible for him to replace King An's position. It was impossible for him to compete in the imperial court and raise the status of the imperial residence of King An. Shao Qi and Shao Shi were chatting in the Tianshu courtyard. Chu Li went over and sat beside them. The two women's faces were like jade and beautiful. Their bright eyes were like gems under the light. Shao Shi said, "There's news from Suan. He wants to come back and stay for a while." Chu Li raised his eyebrows. Shao Shi said, "I didn't try to persuade him. It was his own idea." Chu Li looked at Shao Qi. Shao Qi nodded. Second sister was just asking about him. She didn't try to persuade him. He suddenly wants to come back? Chu Li furrowed his brows. Shao Qi said, "He just came out of isolated cultivation and achieved divine power. If he wants to improve further, he needs to experience the mortal world and polish his Buddhist heart. Returning to the imperial residence of King An as the young prince is a great opportunity for him to practice." That's a good idea. If he wants to become a Buddha, he needs to experience the mortal world. If he doesn't experience it, how can he break through it? Shao Shi smiled. "I think he'll be back soon." Chu Li sighed. "The imperial residence is going to be troublesome from now on." "It's not that serious." Shao Shi smiled. "He's still a child. He's a Buddhist." Chu Li said impatiently, "Who would underestimate a Buddhist? If he becomes the crown prince, it'll be beneficial to the imperial family of Ji. If that's the case, the crown prince won't be able to sit still." Shao Qi said, "He'll think of a way to stop it." Assassinate Suan? Would they dare to offend the Titanium Temple? Shao Shi frowned. Chu Li said, "With the emperor around, the crown prince is very courageous. The Titanium Temple does not dare to kill the crown prince, so he can act recklessly. Has Suan made his move now?" "They should have already left." Shao Shi nodded and said, "However, he shouldn't have gone far. Since he's out traveling, he naturally wouldn't be in a hurry. He must have strolled here bit by bit." Shao Qi asked, "Should we send someone to protect Suan?" Chu Li nodded slowly. "I'll go there myself." "All right," Shao Qi said, "but you don't have to worry too much. No one knows that Su Only Temple is here, and it's impossible for there to be a traitor in the Titanium Temple, so the Crown Prince won't receive any news. Chu Li shook his head. Then you're underestimating Lu Yurong. Xiao Qi furrowed her brows as she looked at him. Chu Li said, I'm guessing that she'll send someone to guard the Titanium Temple. Once Suen comes out, she'll know. I'm guessing that she's already thinking of how to deal with Suen, either by scaring him back to the Titanium Temple or preventing him from coming to the Imperial residence. That's possible. Xiao Shi nodded. Xiao Qi was silent as well. They had all experienced Lu Yurong's prowess. Back then, the public house was utterly defeated by her. Xiao Qi faintly said, Then how are you going to counter her tactics? You can't just force it and fall out with her, right? Xiao Shi pursed her lips and smiled. I think he can't bear to fall out with Lu Yurong. Chu Li looked at her helplessly. This was like adding fuel to the fire. We'll just deal with it when it comes. Chu Li sighed. Let's bring Suen over first, then we'll talk about other things. Once Suen enters the fairy's capital, it'll be much easier. They won't dare to go overboard. Are we going to be beaten up all the time? Xiao Shi scoffed. Can't we just strike first? Chu Li said, Then I have an idea. Hurry up and say it. Xiao Shi scoffed. Don't be afraid because of Lu Yurong. Even if you show mercy, they might not appreciate it. Chu Li sighed. Emperor, please issue a decree to let the Secret Guardians Hall protect Suen. That's a good idea. Xiao Shi smiled. Xiao Qi faintly said, He might not be able to stop Lu Yurong. Chu Li said, As long as she has some concerns, she won't make a move until the last moment. After all, the Crown Prince's position is still stable, so she won't take the risk. The Titanium Temple isn't an ordinary sect. That's true. Xiao Shi nodded. That's good. But she'll definitely play some tricks. She'll lay an ambush and strike at the critical moment. Chu Li nodded. I'll be careful. Once Suen arrives, the public house will be livelier. Xiao Shi shook her head. I'm so bored that I'm sick. I get annoyed when I see the servants outside. They're all listless. They'll be fine after a while. Xiao Qi said. Chu Li nodded. I wonder how long Suen will be here. From what he said, he might be here for a while. Xiao Shi shook her head. He's here to cultivate. He doesn't seem interested in anything else. Xiao Qi said, Don't force him. Chu Li smiled and nodded. Xiao Shi smiled. If Suen really wants to be the emperor, it won't be easy. He has no foundation in the imperial court. It's impossible. It's better for him to be a royal highness. Chu Li smiled without saying a word. He sat with the two ladies for a while and returned to his courtyard alone. Xiao Shi and Xiao Qi continued their conversation. Chu Li extinguished the lamp and sat quietly in the courtyard, bathing in the moonlight. The moonlight was cold, and the surroundings were unusually quiet. A white shadow flashed by. Lu Yurong landed in front of him. She was dressed in a snow-white robe. Under the moonlight, she looked like an otherworldly fairy. Her beautiful face was covered by a white veil. Only a pair of clear eyes could be seen. Chu Li raised his eyebrows and looked at Lu Yurong. Lu Yurong gracefully sat opposite him. She picked up the teapot on the stone table and poured herself a cup of tea. Where have you been all this time? Isolated cultivation. I just came out, Chu Li said. Lu Yurong frowned as she sized him up. I heard that you were killed by Sun Mingyue. Chu Li smiled. Lu Yurong asked, You went to provoke Sun Mingyue? She killed me. Chu Li shook his head and sighed. But I was lucky to be alive. I could only go into isolated cultivation to heal. Fortunately, it was a blessing in disguise. Lu Yurong sized him up and nodded lightly. She also felt that Chu Li's aura was like the mountains and the sea. It was vast and majestic, almost suffocating her. Looks like Sun Mingyue is anxious. You killed too many disciples of the Holy Church of Light. Lu Yurong shook her head. I have to be careful too. Chu Li slowly nodded. It's best to be careful. The Holy Church of Light is not easy to deal with. How did you know that I'm back? What do you think? Lu Yurong smiled faintly. Chu Li frowned as he stared at her. Logically speaking, no one knew that he was back. It should not be the doing of a traitor. Chapter 32-33. In the end, Chu Li concluded that she came here often, which was why she could see him. He smiled and said, "Thank you for your concern, Miss Lu. I'm flattered." Lu Yurong scoffed, "I've always suspected the authenticity of this news. I don't think you'll die so easily." "Of course," Chu Li said, "but you're looking down on the protectors of the imperial residence of King An. Them?" Lu Yurong chuckled and shook her head. "It's just a decoration. Only Third Lady Xiao could sense my presence. If someone really wanted to harm the imperial residence of King An, you wouldn't be able to defend yourself. Now, who would still want to harm the imperial residence of King An?" Chu Li shook his head and smiled. Lu Yurong said, "You should know that the High Duke's public house has offended many people. Do you really think that no one would dare to mess around? I received news that the elder brother of a disciple of the Golden Blade sect has joined the Sword Moon sect. It is said that he has already left the mountain to take revenge for his younger brother." "Golden Blade faction?" Chu Li smiled. "They even have such a person?" Lu Yurong shook her head and said, "You might not know what the martial arts world of the Fu dynasty thinks of the Ji dynasty. In their eyes, the martial arts world of the Ji dynasty is just a bunch of second-rate masters who can't even withstand a single blow." Chu Li nodded. Lu Yurong said, "This Sword Moon sect disciple's surname is Chao Xian. He's a genius." Chu Li said, "You're saying that he will definitely seek revenge on the High Duke's public house by assassinating Master Xiao? Xiao Taiying?" Lu Yurong shook her head and said, "He won't assassinate Xiao Taiying, but Second Lady Xiao and Third Lady Xiao." Chu Li furrowed his brows. "If he's really a genius disciple, I'm sure he's proud and arrogant. He should be targeting Chang. Why would he target my wife and second sister? Because he also likes Third Lady Xiao." Lu Yurong chuckled. "She is your wife." As she spoke, she lightly struck out with her palm. It was the Empyrean fairy palm. Her palm was as white as jade, and under the moonlight, it flickered with a warm luster. It was as if it was really carved out of white jade, and it even emitted a trace of coldness. The two of them were very close, separated by only a table. Moreover, this palm had suddenly appeared while she was speaking, so it was impossible to guard against it. Chu Li extended his palm and stopped the Empyrean fairy palm. Bang! The two palms collided, producing a dull sound. The hot steam from the teacup on the table shook slightly, but it quickly returned to normal. Lu Yurong and the stone block slid back 2 meters. She looked at Chu Li in surprise and pursed her lips into a smile. "You've really improved a lot. It looks like you've really profited from your misfortune." Chu Li glared at her angrily. "You're here to see if I'm dead or not before telling me about this, Chao Xian?" "Yes." Lu Yurong nodded and stood up. "Since we're done with business, I should take my leave." Chu Li fist saluted. "Thank you." Lu Yurong waved her hand and suddenly stopped when she was about to turn around. She said casually, "Oh right, I heard that the young prince is returning to the imperial residence?" Chu Li frowned. "You really did send someone to keep an eye on the titanium temple. There's no harm in being careful." Lu Yurong said with a smile, "If something happens to the young prince, we will be able to know the truth and avoid being framed. By the way, the young prince is returning to the imperial residence, right?" Chu Li said, "I'm just out to experience the world and hone my Buddhist heart." "Why are you so nervous?" "Honing one's Buddhist heart is a good thing. I'm just afraid that the young prince is going to use the entire Ji dynasty to hone his Buddhist heart and become the emperor." Lu Yurong said casually, "What better way to hone one's Buddhist heart than being the emperor?" Chu Li shook his head and smiled. "You're right to think that way. But Suan might not have the same thought. He grew up in the Titanium Temple and prefers peace to action. Even if he becomes the emperor, he would still be afraid of it. He's still young and his mind is uncertain. He might not have any ideas. It's better to be careful. Lu Yurong smiled and shook her head. The imperial residence of King En is welcoming the young prince. Congratulations. Maybe he'll leave after a few days. What's there to congratulate? Chu Li smiled. Why are you being so careful? Is the position of His Highness the Crown Prince still not secure? Lu Yurong said, Of course His Highness the Crown Prince is as stable as a rock. He just doesn't want to see the Ji dynasty fall into internal strife and lose the ability to deal with the Li dynasty's attack. This is His Highness' compassionate heart. Chu Li chuckled. Lu Yurong scoffed. Head Chief Chu, you better not have any wishful thinking. Chu Li smiled. All right, I'll try to persuade Suen, that's good. Lu Yurong stared at him deeply as if she wanted to see if he was speaking the truth. Unfortunately, Chu Li had a faint smile on his face. There was no abnormality or flaw at all. She could not see through him. She scoffed and fluttered away. Not long after she left, Shao-Chi returned. She wrinkled her nose and glared at him. Chu Li sighed helplessly. Lu Yurong had a faint fragrance on her body. She had been gone for a while. Normal people would not be able to smell it, but Shao-Chi could. When are you bringing Suen back? She glared at him and sat opposite him. Chu Li said, He has my protective jade talisman with him. If there's any danger, he can just crush it. Since he wants to train his heart, let him train himself first. You're not bringing him back now? Shao-Chi was surprised. Chu Li shook his head. Shao-Chi said, Looks like Lu Yurong convinced you. Chu Li said, She did talk about Suen, but she didn't take him seriously, so you don't have to worry about him for now. However, there's something else that we have to be wary of. He used the heaven-peering skill to see the two women being assassinated, so he did not allow them to leave the residence for a month. However, the heaven-peering skill could not reveal the identity of the assassin, so he did not know where the danger came from. Now that Lu Yurong mentioned it, he finally knew the identity of the assassin. It was a disciple of the Sword Moon sect. When he told her about the assassin, Shao-Chi frowned. The Fu dynasty's Sword Moon sect? Her beautiful face turned solemn. Although Chu Li was not at a disadvantage when he encountered a master from the Fu dynasty, the entire Ji dynasty was in awe of the Fu dynasty. The Sword Moon sect was even scarier than the Tempest Temple, so they had to be careful. Although she was successful in cultivating the regal sword scripture, she was not confident that she could win against a disciple of the Sword Moon sect. Even if she won, it would be troublesome. She could not just let him go and wait for him to come again. If she crippled his martial arts, she would offend the Sword Moon sect. The Tempest Temple would have to worry about the High Duke's public house because of the Imperial Court, but the Sword Moon sect would not care. It would bring disaster to the High Duke's public house. When she thought of this, she could not help but feel anxious. Chu Li smiled. As long as he doesn't leave the residence, it won't be a problem. He'll definitely rush into the residence, Shao-Chi said. Chu Li said, If you work together with Senior Shun and the Protector, you should be able to protect yourself. Besides, I'm here. Shao-Chi's eyebrows did not relax. You can't kill him. I understand. Chu Li smiled. We can't afford to offend the Sword Moon sect. Shao-Chi nodded slowly. Although it's unfair, it's the reality. The Sword Moon sect is one of the 8 major sects in the Fu dynasty. If we become enemies with them, we'll implicate the High Duke's public house. Just defeat him, you don't have to kill him, Chu Li said. Chapter 32-34. Shao-Chi sighed in relief and gently nodded. However, she still looked at Chu Li anxiously. She knew Chu Li the best. She knew that he would not let Chao Xian go as easily as he said. Chu Li looked at her and smiled. Don't worry, madam. I'll handle it properly. Don't lose sight of the bigger picture. Shao-Chi was worried. Chu Li smiled. This concerns the safety of the public house. How can I be careless? Suddenly, a long howl rang through the night sky and woke up the public house. The protectors of the public house immediately became alert. Zhu Tianhua and the others quickly surrounded the Tianshu courtyard. As for Chu Li, no one came over. Shao Qi frowned. Is Chao Xian here? Chu Li nodded slowly. The omniscient mirror had already seen a young man with thick eyebrows and big eyes gliding over. He wore a purple shirt and was tall and burly like an iron tower. A long sword hung on his waist. The sword on his waist looked like a thin stick. He swept past the roofs like a gust of wind and landed in the Tianshu courtyard like a feather. Zhu Tianhua and the others shot towards him. Chu Li's voice suddenly rang. Step back! Zhu Tianhua and the others turned in the air and retreated to their original positions. Chu Li flashed and appeared in front of the tall young man. He placed his hand on the hilt of his sword. Who are you? Why did you trespass the imperial residence? Where's Third Lady Xiao? The tall young man scoffed. Who are you? Chu Li frowned. My wife is not in the residence. You can tell me directly. He had already read the man's mind. It was Chao Xian, the genius disciple of the Sword Moon sect. He was outstanding among the younger generation and had cultivated his swordsmanship to an extremely high level. That was why he could not wait to avenge his younger brother by killing the married Shao Qi. He had always admired Shao Qi. Ever since he had met her once, he could not forget her and thought about her day and night. Initially, he planned to go down the mountain and ask for her hand in marriage from the High Duke's public house after he had mastered his swordsmanship. As a disciple of the Fu dynasty's Sword Moon sect, he was more than qualified to be a match for the third lady of the High Duke's public house. However, he never expected that Shao Qi was already married before he could master his swordsmanship. Moreover, she was married to a chief of the High Duke's public house. She was as blind as a bat and did not know how to love herself. A woman like her did not deserve to be loved by him and should not be alive. His love turned into hatred, so the first thing he did when he left the mountain was to kill Shao Qi and avenge his brother at the same time, killing two birds with one stone. Chu Li's killing intent surged when he saw these thoughts. He wanted nothing more than to kill Chao Xian right away. She's not here, so killing you is the same. Chao Xian sneered and unsheathed his sword. Holding the sword in his hand was like picking up a straw. It was light and agile. He took a big step forward, and with a flash of cold light, the tip of the sword was already in front of Chu Li's chest. It was about to pierce into his heart. Ding! Chu Li parried the tip of the sword with his sword. Chao Xian felt his whole body tremble. A strange force was transmitted from the sword to his body. His whole body stiffened, and he almost could not hold the sword. His body also froze for a moment. Chu Li looked at him quietly and did not take the opportunity to attack. Although Chao Xian was a genius disciple of the Sword Moon sect, his cultivation level was much lower than Chu Li's. It was not worth it for Chu Li to use his full strength. Chu Li wanted to completely destroy Chao Xian's confidence. Chao Xian desperately urged the heart technique of the Sword Moon Palace. After a while, he returned to normal, but his expression changed. He stared at Chu Li as if he was facing a great enemy. He did not blink. Who are you? Chu Li laughed. Chu Li. Impossible. Chao Xian held his sword tightly. The tip of the sword trembled slightly. He shook his head forcefully. You can't be Chu Li. He could not believe that Chu Li had such a powerful cultivation level. In his impression, the martial arts world of the Ji dynasty was weak. As long as he appeared, other than enlightened masters, everyone else would be defeated by him. He did not expect Chu Li to be so powerful. With such powerful martial arts, he should not be from the martial arts world of the Ji dynasty. Chu Li chuckled. You think that your martial arts can make you invincible in the Ji dynasty, don't you? You think that the swordsmanship of the Sword Moon sect is exquisite and unstoppable in the Ji dynasty, right? That's right. Chao Xian scoffed. Even the Tempest Temple was not as powerful as the Sword Moon sect. Therefore, he was dismissive of the martial arts world of the Ji dynasty. Chu Li shook his head. You're a frog in a well. If the martial arts world of the Ji dynasty is so weak, the Fu dynasty would have conquered the world long ago. Chao Xian sneered. I don't know where you got this fortuitous encounter. You're really lucky, but do you think you can defeat me like this? Then let me show you the real swordsmanship of the Sword Moon sect. His long sword suddenly lit up and shot out a dazzling white light. His tower-like body suddenly became as light as a feather and appeared in front of Chu Li in an instant. Ding! Chu Li swung his sword horizontally again. He had taught this move to Li Hanyan before. It was the essence of the swordsmanship that he had comprehended. It had the effect of moving 1,000 pounds with little effort. He took a step back and his whole body was eroded by waves of numbness. The force on Chao Xian's sword was pure and strange. It was worlds apart from the power of the previous sword. TSS. The sword flashed again. Chao Xian thrust his sword forward again. This time, it was faster than the previous one. Ding! Chu Li swung his sword again, and took a step back to dissipate the sword force. TSS. Ding! TSS. Ding! Chao Xian's sword was faster than the one before. He continuously thrust his sword several times, but Chu Li swung his sword away every time. Chu Li took a step back with every thrust, wearing down his opponent's spirit. He knew that Chao Xian was using a secret skill. Such a powerful swordsmanship consumed a lot of inner energy. He could not use too many swords. He just had to wait for Chao Xian to run out of energy. However, Chao Xian's sword was faster and fiercer. It was like a rolling snowball. It seemed endless and unstoppable. Chu Li shook his head as he swung his sword. This secret skill would stop at the most intense moment. However, looking at Chao Xian's thoughts, he would not wait until then. He already had the intention to leave. TSS. After Chao Xian thrust his sword forward, his sword suddenly changed direction and avoided Chu Li's sword. Then, he became one with his sword and shot out like a bolt of lightning. His speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he was 100 meters away. He was already out of King An's imperial residence and on the street. Chu Li disappeared from where he was and appeared in front of Chao Xian. Chao Xian had originally prepared a turnaround sword. He was waiting for Chu Li to catch up to him, and then he would thrust his sword back. It was impossible to guard against, and it would definitely hit. However, he did not expect Chu Li to see through his plan. He appeared in front of him, and unknowingly broke this powerful turnaround sword. The tip of Chao Xian's sword changed direction and avoided Chu Li before shooting into the distance. This time, Chu Li appeared behind him and dodged Chao Xian's stab with his sword. Chao Xian forcefully stopped his stab. His vigor was fluctuating and his inner energy stagnated. Just as his inner energy changed and he was about to attack again, the tip of Chu Li's sword pierced his shoulder without any hindrance. Clang! Chao Xian's right shoulder was hit and his sword fell to the ground. Chu Li resisted the urge to stab him to death. He sheathed his sword and sneered. Is this the Sword Moon sect's sword technique? Is this the only sword technique in the Sword Moon sect? Shut up. Chao Xian quickly stabbed his shoulder a few times to stop the bleeding. He said coldly, Your cultivation level is great, but don't you dare insult my Sword Moon sect. Chu Li smiled and shook his head. You're just a weakling. You should go back to the Sword Moon sect and train for a few more years. He waved his hand and disappeared from the street in a flash. Chapter 32-35. Chao Xian gritted his teeth and stared at the spot where Chu Li disappeared as if he was glaring at him. He swore to himself that he would go into isolated cultivation when he returned to the Sword Moon sect. He would not come out until he perfected the Aquaselenic sword technique. When he returned, he would stab Chu Li to death bit by bit and kill Shao Qi as well so that they could share the same fate. No, I can't let them die together. He had to kill Shao Qi first, then slowly torture Chu Li. He had to kill Shao Qi in front of him, then torture him for 1.5 years before killing him. By then, Shao Qi would have reincarnated and they would not be able to see each other, ha. He could not help but laugh when he thought of this. His depression that was about to go crazy dissipated a little. He smiled and bent down to pick up his sword and put it back into its scabbard. Then, he glared at the direction where Chu Li disappeared and strode away. He did not use his light body technique and only relied on his steps that were twice the size of an ordinary person to travel at a fast speed. Since he had used his secret skill, his inner energy had been exhausted. If he encountered a master in this situation, he would definitely die, so he wanted to recover for a while. He took out a porcelain bottle, opened the stopper, and poured all the pills into his mouth. His extremely weak body was like a bottomless pit that swallowed the medicine's effect. In the end, only a little of the medicine's effects were left and a thin inner energy was produced in his body, but it was still not enough to support his light body technique. He was burning with anxiety as he was afraid that Chu Li would suddenly change his mind and kill him. He suddenly walked to the forest nearby and began to slowly practice a set of sword technique in an open space. It was soft and gentle like an old man stretching his limbs. This was a method of training while moving. Apart from strengthening one's blood qi, it guided one's inner energy and slowly increased one's inner energy. After cultivating for an hour, he felt that he could use a ball of inner energy and use his light body technique. If he encountered danger, he could escape. He then left the forest and strode along the main road. Soon, he arrived at a small town. He bought a horse and rode it. In the evening, he had already galloped for more than 100 miles and was relieved. It seemed that Chu Li did not change his mind to kill him. His life was saved. He would kill him after returning to the Sword Moon sect for isolated cultivation. The sun was setting in the west and the last rays of light shone on him. He let the horse trot so that it wouldn't die of exhaustion. Throughout the entire journey, he only rested for a moment. Finally, he saw a forest that was suitable for hiding, so he jumped off the horse's back and pulled the horse into the forest. He let the horse eat grass by itself while he found some dry firewood to start a fire. Then, he killed 2 deer, skinned them and gutted them. Using a wooden stick, he skewered them over the fire and roasted them. The musk deer quickly turned golden. The oil dripped on the bonfire and made a crackling sound, making the flames suddenly brighten. Then, a rich fragrance came, making his mouth salivate more and more, and his stomach growled. He stretched out his hand and tore off a leg. The fragrance of meat filled the air. Just as he was about to put it into his mouth, a white shadow suddenly appeared behind him. It was a graceful woman who slapped his back. Bang! He flew out and spat out a mouthful of blood in midair. Although his martial arts had greatly deteriorated, his intuition was still sharp. He had already noticed the danger, but he was unable to dodge it. He could only watch helplessly as he was sent flying. He felt as if his internal organs were being twisted by knives. The inner strength coming from his back felt as if several knives were cutting into his internal organs. Every part of his body was being twisted into pieces. It was so painful that he couldn't help but let out a blood-curdling scream. Bang! He crashed into a locust tree and slid to the root. His face was scratched by the bark and he felt a burning pain. He used all his strength to turn around and look at the woman who was walking over gracefully and leisurely. She was dressed in white, and her face was covered by a white veil. Only a pair of beautiful eyes could be seen. They were clear and spirited, and when she looked around, they were overflowing with colors and captivating. Even as an enemy, he could not help but feel his heart palpitate, and his eyes became fiery. The woman in white slowly walked up to him, bringing with her a faint fragrance. She stared at him with her bright eyes, shook her head, and slapped him again. "Who are you?" Chao Xian hurriedly shouted. The woman in white did not change her stance. Bang! Chao Xian's chest was hit, and he immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. He was already on the verge of death, and his breathing was weak. This palm energy was like a mountain torrent, destroying his internal organs and all the meridians in his body. Not a single part of his body was broken. His vision darkened, and he knew that he was about to die. Once he fainted, it would be eternal sleep, and he would never be able to open his eyes again. There was a voice roaring in his heart, and he screamed unwillingly. He did not want to die. He had just left the mountain to cultivate, and he had not enjoyed his prime years yet. He had not left the mountain to enjoy his wealth, and he should not die like this. The woman in white shook her head and said, "You're quite a tough one." As she spoke, she extended her right palm again, and slapped it lightly. Her palm looked like it was carved out of white jade. It was crystal clear and warm, and its brilliance flowed like spring water. Bang! Suddenly, a palm reached out from the side, and collided with her jade palm. There was a dull sound of leather being hit. Chuli was already standing beside him, smiling at the woman in white. The woman in white's eyes flashed, and she scoffed. "Chuli, you want to save him?" "I'm not saving him, I'm saving myself." Chuli shook his head and smiled. "If you kill him, the Sword Moon sect will definitely cause trouble for me. They'll definitely blame this person's death on me. You're quite broad-minded. He wanted to kill you, but you're secretly protecting him. I'm really impressed." "I'm impressed." The woman in white chuckled. Chuli said, "The bigger picture is more important. It's not a big deal to endure humiliation. After all, he's a disciple of the Sword Moon sect." Although Chao Xian's vision darkened and he was in a trance, he heard the conversation between the two clearly. The person who came to save him was actually Chuli, which was really unexpected. However, could this be a trick by Chuli? Chuli deliberately found someone to kill him, and then saved him, hoping that he would be lenient and not kill him in the future. What a wishful thinking! As long as he mastered his swordsmanship, he would definitely kill Shao Qi first, and then torture that person with the surname Shao. He played him like a fool. When he thought of this, he hissed, "Chuli, if you save me, not only will I not assassinate you, but I'll also lend you a hand. I'm a disciple of the Sword Moon sect. You can come to the Sword Moon sect." Chuli turned to look at him, and then at the woman in white. He chuckled. "That's for the best. You go first, I'll hold her off." "All right." Chao Xian nodded vigorously, took a deep breath, and took out a jade bottle from his chest. He swallowed a snow-white pill in the bottle, and his face quickly regained some color. It was a miraculous effect. Chuli shook his head. It was such a waste for such a spirit medicine to be consumed. Chao Xian activated his inner energy and leaped out like an arrow, disappearing in the blink of an eye. He did not even care about his horse. While activating his inner energy to heal his wounds, he sped up to escape, afraid that Chuli would change his mind. Chapter 32-36. Chuli looked at the lady in white and shook his head. "Miss Lu, what you did was not right. I helped you get rid of future trouble." Lu Yurong took off her white veil and revealed a sweet smile on her face. "You don't have to thank me." Chuli scoffed. "If he really dies, not only King An's imperial residence but the High Duke's public house will be in trouble." "You are so evil." Lu Yurong smiled. "Don't worry, I will disguise myself as a disciple of the Holy Church of Light." Chuli laughed. "The Holy Church of Light? You can imitate the martial arts of the Holy Church of Light? The scripture of great light isn't that difficult. Even if I can't, I can imitate the divine light fist. Chu Li smiled. Miss Lu, you know the scripture of great light? All right, I don't know the scripture of great light, but I found the cultivation method of the divine light fist. Chu Li said, can you fool the Sword Moon sect with that trick? They can definitely tell that it's an imitation. In the end, the Sword Moon sect and the Holy Church of Light wanted to go against King An's imperial residence and the High Duke's public house. You? He shook his head. That was a ruthless move. Lu Yurong chuckled. You were able to guess this step of mine and came here in advance. You owe me a favor. Wouldn't it be troublesome if I couldn't guess it? Chu Li's face darkened. Miss Lu, if that's the case, don't blame me for being rude. If you can't guess it, I can only say that I was wrong about you. Lu Yurong smiled. She did not believe that Chu Li could not guess this step with his intelligence. Chu Li shook his head. If I exposed your identity just now, what do you think will happen? You didn't expose me. Lu Yurong smiled. I have to thank you. If Chu Li really exposed her identity, the Secret Guardians Hall and the Ren Public House would become the target of the Sword Moon sect's revenge unless they killed Chao Xian. She could not kill him even if she wanted to. Chu Li would follow her closely. By then, even if she mobilized the Secret Guardians Hall, she might not be able to kill Chao Xian. Chu Li shook his head. It was not that he did not want to expose Lu Yurong, but he knew that Chao Xian was a cold-hearted and suspicious person. He thought that he was infallible and thought that he was smart. Even if he exposed Lu Yurong's identity, Chao Xian would not believe him. Rather than pointing it out, it was better not to point it out, and Lu Yurong would owe him a favor. Chu Li shook his head and said, There's no need to thank me. I'll be grateful if you don't hurt me so much. Lu Yurong said, All right, I'll owe you another favor this time. However, if we don't get rid of this person, there will be endless troubles in the future. Are you really not going to kill him? I want to kill him, but I can't. Chu Li sighed and shook his head. Although I'm conceited, I know that I can't afford to offend the Sword Moon sect. The Sword Moon sect isn't the Holy Church of Light or the Tempest Temple. Lu Yurong smiled. Looks like you haven't lost your mind yet. It was easy for someone like Chu Li to become arrogant and conceited. He could now be considered the youth champion and could do whatever he wanted in the Ji dynasty. He did not even think much of the Fu dynasty because he had never been to the Fu dynasty and had never seen how powerful the Fu dynasty was. Therefore, he would subconsciously think that the Fu dynasty was nothing much. Chu Li said faintly, He probably won't cause any trouble for a while. It won't be too late to deal with him in the future. Be careful not to raise a tiger, Lu Yurong said. Chu Li said, We'll talk about that in the future. Lu Yurong scoffed and said, All right, if that's the case, I'll take my leave first. Chu Li said faintly, As for Suen, it's better for the Secret Guardians Hall to take care of him. All right, I won't cause any trouble for Suen this time. Consider that I've returned your favor. Lu Yurong rolled her eyes at him. Chu Li shook his head and said, This isn't considered a favor. What do you think the Secret Guardians Hall can do to him? He's a disciple of the Titanium Temple and has cultivated his divine power successfully. Even if you personally attack him, you won't be able to do anything to him. Then I'd like to see it for myself. Lu Yurong scoffed. Then go ahead and try, Chu Li said. Lu Yurong gave him a sidelong glance and fluttered away like a cloud. It was indescribable and elegant. Chu Li frowned for a moment and sighed softly. With his current martial arts, it was not difficult to kill Lu Yurong, but he had never planned to do so. The two of them were like enemies but also friends. They had been secretly fighting each other, but they also appreciated each other and felt like they were bosom friends. It would be a pity to just kill her. Chao Xian used the spirit pill's effect to run back to the Fu dynasty's territory. Once he stepped into the Fu dynasty's territory, he immediately relaxed and let out a sigh of relief. Once he entered the Fu dynasty, Chu Li and the lady in white would not dare to kill him again. Killing him in the Fu dynasty's territory would be a provocation to the entire Sword Moon sect. Chu Li did not have the guts, and neither did the lady in white. When he thought of Lu Yurong, he gritted his teeth and decided to find her after mastering his sword technique and make her wish she was dead. Once he reached the Fu dynasty's territory, he was not in a hurry to return to the Sword Moon sect. If he returned in such a sorry state, he would definitely be ridiculed by everyone. When he came out of isolated cultivation, he had offended some people because of his arrogance. If he returned like this, they would definitely take the opportunity to mock him. He hid in a cave to recuperate and heal his injuries. He was prepared to return after his cultivation level was restored. The night was hazy and the moonlight was like water. His surroundings were silent. He suddenly opened his eyes and floated to his feet. He pulled his sword out of its scabbard and his entire body tensed up. He felt an inexplicable chill and danger. A man of medium build was already standing at the entrance of the cave. He stood there quietly without saying a word. The dimness of the cave could not block his vision. He could see that the man was a plain-looking middle-aged man with bright eyes that were staring at him. "Who are you?" Chao Xian asked in a deep voice. "What business do you have with me?" Chu Li calmly asked, "Who are you?" He changed his appearance slightly and turned into a plain-looking middle-aged man. He did not use his original appearance to avoid any accident. Chao Xian said, "I'm Chao Xian, a disciple of the Sword Moon sect." He looked a little arrogant and looked at Chu Li calmly. "If I've offended you in any way, please forgive me. I'll leave now and won't disturb you again." A man should know when to yield and when to stand tall. Now that his cultivation level had not recovered, it was not appropriate for him to fight with others. "That's good." Chu Li's eyes flickered for a moment before he slowly moved aside to make way. It looked like he was worried about the Sword Moon sect, and had no choice but to let Chao Xian leave. Chao Xian secretly sighed in relief. The Sword Moon sect's reputation was indeed useful. As long as it was not one of the other 8 sects in the Fu dynasty, it could do whatever it wanted. Chu Li took 2 steps back, as if he was worried that Chao Xian would suddenly attack him. His whole body tensed up and looked nervous. Seeing him like this, Chao Xian felt even more confident. He proudly nodded and walked out with his long sword in hand. Chu Li slowly took a step back and leaned against the wall. Chao Xian smiled and fist saluted. "Goodbye." Chu Li reluctantly fist saluted. Bang! Chu Li suddenly slammed his palm on Chao Xian's chest. His palms were like white jade with a layer of rouge. It was the blood jade palm. Chao Xian flew straight out of the cave. He spat out a mouthful of blood in the air and landed heavily on the ground. His eyes widened in disbelief. Chu Li's palm directly killed Chao Xian. Disciples of the 8 major sects were the most difficult to kill. They usually had antique studies and secret skills that could save their lives. That was why Chu Li spent so much effort to kill them in one hit. To prevent any accidents, he stepped forward and slammed his palm on Chao Xian's forehead. Chao Xian's brain was instantly shattered. Although Chu Li did not cultivate the bloody garment divine power, he had long learned the heart technique of the blood jade palm. He would practice it when he had nothing to do. Now it finally came in handy. The palm force of the white jade palm was extremely condensed and its power was shocking. He was even tempted to cultivate the blood jade palm to a higher level so that it could become a trump card in the future. Chapter 32-37. Chu Li stood where he was and looked at Chao Xian. He did not want to kill him unless he had no other choice. He had entered the Destiny Pavilion and Stargazing Pavilion and fought against the Church of the Divine Blood. He knew how powerful the 8 major sects were, and the Sword Moon sect was not weak. They might have some secret skills that could catch up to him. Fortunately, He had the heavenly heart technique and the star stone to protect him. Others would not be able to find him even if they tried to extrapolate. Chao Xian was vicious and would be a scourge if he was left alive. He did not know how many people he would harm in the future. Truly killing him would be a form of justice. His mind was clear and he felt that he had a deeper understanding of the heavenly heart technique. Under the suppression of the star stone, the progress of his heavenly heart manual was extremely slow. He had been stuck at the 9th level for a long time and was unable to advance any further. He did not expect that killing this Chao Xian would allow his heavenly heart manual to advance a little. It seemed that if he wanted to advance his heavenly heart manual, he could not blindly cultivate in seclusion. Cultivating the heart was the shortcut. He thought about it carefully and shook his head helplessly. No matter how powerful a person was, he could not do everything he wanted. Even an enlightened master was bound by the heavenly rules, let alone the rest of the people who were bound by endless restrictions. He stood beside Chao Xian and pondered for a while before smiling. It was imperative for him to enter Goddess Attraction Mountain to learn the dragon taming technique. He would not be able to be free if he did not become an enlightened master. According to Li Xinghe, he would only have a chance if he perfected the heavenly heart technique. Otherwise, he would not have the chance to cultivate the dragon taming technique. He could not cultivate the heavenly heart technique in the Ji dynasty. King An's imperial residence and the High Duke's public house bound him so that he could not do anything he wanted. However, he could do whatever he wanted in the Holy Church of Light. This was a great opportunity. He returned to King An's imperial residence and spoke to Shao Qi before disappearing and reappearing at the Falling Autumn City branch. For the next few days, he cultivated in the Falling Autumn City branch. There were only 4 Holy Church of Light disciples in the branch who gathered information, delivered food and drinks to him, and passed information to the Great Light Peak. The air was fresh and pleasant in the morning. He was practicing his swordsmanship on the branch's training field when he suddenly heard footsteps. A slender and graceful figure appeared on the training field. Dressed in a light yellow gown, she was graceful and elegant, looking at him with a smile. Chu Li stopped and smiled. "Miss Yu Ru." Yu Ru gracefully approached him, bringing with her a faint fragrance. She smiled and curtsied. "How have you been, big brother Zhao?" Chu Li smiled. "I'm just wasting my time and accomplishing nothing." Yu Ru shook her head and smiled. "I've heard about big brother Zhao's magnificent feat from my master." As expected of big brother Zhao, Chu Li gestured with his hand, and the two of them went to the gazebo to talk. A tall and burly disciple of the Holy Church of Light entered the gazebo with a teacup in his hand. He placed the teacup down gently before he left. Yu Ru picked up her teacup and took a sip. She sighed and said, "Big brother Zhao, are you waiting for the reincarnation temple and the others to seek revenge?" Chu Li nodded. "I'll definitely come for revenge." "Miss Yu Ru, why are you here?" "I have something to report to Master." With a bright smile on her face, Yu Ru stared intently at him with her bright eyes. "Big brother Zhao, the reincarnation temple is very difficult to deal with. There are many hidden talents there. You must be careful." Chu Li chuckled. "I was just about to experience the antique study of the reincarnation temple. Yu Ru, you'd better leave as soon as possible." "Will big brother Zhao return to Gale City?" Yu Ru asked. Chu Li nodded and said, "I'm still the branch leader of Gale City. I'll return once I'm done here." "That's good." Yu Ru smiled sweetly. "Then, I'll wait for big brother Zhao to return." Chu Li asked, "Did anything happen in Gale City? It's peaceful there." Yu Ru nodded. "Ha ha." A hearty laugh was heard. Monk Ji Shan's red cowl fluttered in the wind as he descended from the top of the wall. Like a feather, he floated to the gazebo. Chu Li frowned as he stared at Monk Ji Shan. He seemed to have become a different person as his inner power had doubled. Monk Ji Shan stared at Yu Ru as if he was trying to see through her. Yu Ru frowned at him before she turned to look at Chu Li. Chu Li shook his head and said, "Ignore him. He's a monk from the Reincarnation Temple. He's so young." Yu Ru nodded. "As expected of the Reincarnation Temple. Lady Almsgiver, what's your relationship with Priest Zhao?" Monk Zhishan asked with a smile. "You must feel uncomfortable seeing such an ugly fellow, right?" Yu Ru frowned and glared at him. "Monk, shouldn't a monk be unaffected by his looks?" "Haha, I haven't cultivated to that level yet." Monk Zhishan shook his head and laughed. "An ugly fellow like him will definitely be destroyed. Lady, it's better for you to stay away from him." "Shallow." Yu Ru shook her head. Chu Li said, "Monk Zhishan, it seems like you've had a fortuitous encounter. Not only have you recovered your martial arts, but you've also benefited from your misfortune and improved greatly. It's all thanks to you, Priest Zhao." Monk Zhishan's expression darkened as he slowly said, "If Priest Zhao hadn't crippled my martial arts, I wouldn't have been able to comprehend the essence of the unity of void and excess and advance to the next level." "I see. It's the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture." Chu Li nodded. "I must congratulate you, Monk. I'm very grateful to Priest Zhao." Monk Zhishan chuckled and looked at Yu Ru. "I'll definitely repay you in the future." He could tell that Chu Li was about to attack him, so he leaped into the air and flew over the top of the wall before disappearing. He looked calm and graceful, but his speed was surprisingly fast. Chu Li was about to chase after him when he stopped. He frowned as he saw the other two old monks gliding over. Yu Ru frowned as she looked at Monk Zhishan's back. Then, she turned to look at Chu Li. "What's he doing? Is he trying to show off?" Chu Li nodded. He could not tell what Monk Zhishan was thinking, but he could guess. Monk Zhishan was not a magnanimous person. He would never be grateful to Chu Li, who had crippled his martial arts, for it was a blessing in disguise. Instead, Monk Zhishan's actions were extreme. He wanted to fight with Chu Li to the end and seek revenge by any means necessary. He did not want to fight him head-on. Yu Ru muttered, "How strange." "Yu Ru, you have to be careful." Chu Li muttered, "Monk Zhishan will deal with you." Yu Ru laughed. "Is he trying to pick a soft spot?" "Son, do you think I'm easy to bully?" Chu Li nodded slowly. "You have to be careful. He's cunning and unrestrained by the secular world. He's unscrupulous." Yu Ru said, "That's great. I'd like to see the antique study of the Reincarnation Temple." Chu Li took out a jade talisman and handed it to her. "Take this. If there's any danger, crush it and I'll rush over immediately." "Thank you, Big Brother Zhao." Yu Ru hesitated for a moment before she took the talisman. Chu Li turned around and said, "Monks, since you're here, why are you hiding?" "Namo Amitabha." Two red-robed monks glided down and chanted the name of Buddha. They pressed their palms together and bowed. "Priest Zhao, please excuse us." Chu Li recognized one of them as Yuan Wu, who had a snow-white beard and eyebrows. The other one was a chubby monk with a square head and big ears. He was fair and chubby with a ruddy face. When he smiled, he looked like the Maitreya Buddha. Chu Li frowned. "Are you here to kill me?" Chapter 32-38. Chu Li asked, "Aren't we going to wait for Monk Zhishan to seek revenge and kill the inner demon?" Junior nephew Zhishan's state of mind is complete. There's no need to defeat Priest Zhao. Yuan Wu shook his head. Therefore, Priest Zhao doesn't need to stay in this world anymore. He can head to the outland. Namo Amitabha. Chu Li scoffed. "It seems that you're keeping me alive because you think I'm Monk Zhishan's inner demon?" "That's right." Monk Yuan Wu nodded and said, "I didn't expect martial nephew Zhishan to be so amazing to be able to break through this stage without having to fight with Zhao Fuang. Defeating Zhao Fuang can be said to be both intelligent and capable." Chu Li asked, "Yuan Wu, aren't you going to the Great Light Peak to explain?" "Since you've changed your mind, I'll comply," Yuan Wu replied. Chu nodded. If that's the case, there's no need to gather? Ji de sleigh trick, I'll be joining forces with junior brother. I hope Priest Zhao won't blame me, Yuan Wu said kindly. Chu glanced at the fat monk who was standing at the side, as if he did not exist. He frowned and scoffed. What a reincarnation temple! I can't defeat Priest Zhao alone. Yuan Wu smiled. Then I'll have to find a helper. This is my junior brother, Yuan Jing. Namo Amitba. Greetings, Priest Zhao. Yuan Jing put his palms together and smiled. I've heard of Priest Zhao's name when I was in the reincarnation temple. It's my honor to meet you today. Monk, let's join forces. Yuru scoffed. Chu shook his head. Miss Yuru, you can attack when I'm defeated and ask for help. All right. Yuru nodded. It's my first time meeting such a despicable monk. You don't have to be so polite. Chu smiled. Of course. I'm going to kill you this time. Then I'll have to offend you. Yuan Wu smiled. The two men suddenly swung their hands and the sun chakras and moon chakras shot out from their wide sleeve. The two full moons flickered with a black luster under the sunlight. It was impossible to see them clearly, only a black light. They let out a mournful whistling sound, causing people to feel uneasy and their blood qi to fluctuate. As soon as the two suns appeared, their sleeves were hidden in the sunlight and disappeared without a trace. It was as if they had completely disappeared. Chu frowned. He closed his eyes and opened them again. He had finally witnessed the wonders of the sun and moon wheels. He could not see the sun wheel with his eyes open, nor could he feel the existence of the sun wheel. He could not feel it even if he closed his eyes. Fortunately, he had the omniscient mirror. He could see that the sun wheel followed closely behind the moon wheel and was hidden behind it. By the time he closed his eyes and opened his eyes, the four wheels were already in front of him. Their speed was extremely fast, even faster than ordinary concealed weapons. With such a short distance, he didn't even have time to react. Chu took a step forward and disappeared on the spot. 4 beams of cold light shot towards the black light and the void. Ding! 4 clear sounds rang out in unison. The black wheel and white wheel appeared in the air. One could clearly see the wheel's body, and the strange symbols gave off a bit of awe-inspiring feeling. They had already begun to descend. The two monks pushed their palms forward with a serious look on their faces. Woo! The 4 wheels suddenly moved in the air and turned into 2 beams of black light that shot towards Chu. The sun wheel was hidden in the sunlight again and disappeared. Chu swung his arms and shot out 2 energy blades that hit the approaching moon wheel. At the same time, he turned around and shot out 2 energy blades behind him. 2 sun wheels appeared. However, their trajectories were completely different from the moon wheel. They had already circled behind Chu and attacked him from the front and behind. If it were not for the omniscient mirror, Chu would have been at a disadvantage. These 2 sun wheels were very strange. They could not be seen or sensed. It was as if they had really become invisible weapons. The 2 old monks, Yuan Wu and Yuan Jing, raised their eyebrows and looked gloomy. They did not expect Chu to be able to break the sun and moon wheels. The sun and moon wheels were extremely powerful. One was normal while the other was strange, one was yin while the other was yang. During the day, the moon wheel was normal while the sun wheel was strange. The moon wheel was yang while the sun wheel was yin. Ding 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 ding. Chu consecutively shot out several energy blades at the 2 moon wheels. He noticed that Yuru's face was pale and her blood flow was disrupted by the shrill sound of the moon wheels. She was almost injured. Yuru was a disciple of the Tianluo sect, so she was especially sensitive to sound. The shrill sound of the moon wheels was a type of musical assassination skill. Its power was not inferior to the musical assassination skill of the Tianluo sect. He dodged the attack of the sun wheels and continued to attack the moon wheels with his energy blade. In the end, the moon wheels were struck down by him. The two old monks wanted to snatch the moon wheels but were stopped by Chu Li. Bang 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 bang. Chu Li's palm energy collided with the two old monks. Dull sounds were heard continuously. The three of them wanted to snatch the moon wheels, but they were restraining each other. Chu Li could defeat any one of them, but he could not defeat the two of them. They had a tacit understanding and attacked together to prevent Chu Li from advancing. Yuru was eager to try. However, Chu Li did not speak. She knew that it was not time yet. Her body tensed up as she stared at the two black iron wheels on the ground. She was curious and wanted to pick them up to study them. She wanted to know how they could produce such a powerful musical assassination skill. TSS 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 TSS. Chu Li suddenly withdrew his palm and used his blade. The three of them were close enough to each other. Ding 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 ding. The two old monks were sent flying. There were several holes in their red monk robes, and the arms that were shielding their throats and faces were also pierced, revealing the shiny silver armor underneath. With the loose monk robes covering them, it was difficult for outsiders to see that they were wearing such thick armor. They were truly invulnerable. Moreover, the thick armor did not affect their agility at all. It was impossible to tell that these two sets of armor were not ordinary items. The reincarnation temple knew him very well. The two old monks were wearing this armor to restrain the light blade. Chu Li laughed. Good, good. The reincarnation temple is indeed impressive. As he spoke, he took 2 steps forward and waved his hand. The 2 moons flew into his hands. He activated his inner energy and channeled it into the moons. Buzz! The 2 moons vibrated, as if they were trying to break free from his hands and fly away. Stop! The 2 old monks had just landed when they saw what was happening. They were shocked and furious. Chu Li laughed. Ding! The 2 moons let out a clear ring and stopped vibrating. They were finally tamed by his inner energy. If he did not have the inner energy of the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture, he would not have been able to completely turn these 2 moons into his own. He had come into contact with the 2 sun and moon wheels and secretly searched for information about them. The sun and moon wheels were the unique secret weapons of the reincarnation temple. They were one of a kind and were bestowed with these 2 moons when they first entered the temple. They were nourished with inner energy every day and purified with the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture. After a long time, they could control them freely within 100 meters. The materials of the sun and moon wheels were unique. They were indestructible and could cut through iron like mud. They were extremely light in the hands of their owners but unusually heavy in the hands of others. Chu Li also cultivated the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture and shared the same origin as them. Moreover, his soul energy was stronger. After a few moves, the 2 moons changed owners and became his weapons. However, he did not reveal it. He might be able to impersonate a disciple of the reincarnation temple in the future because no one had ever been able to control the sun and moon wheels. Once he revealed it, no one would suspect that he was a fake. Chapter 32-39. They did not know that Chu Li was able to tame the 2 wheels, but they knew that Chu Li had cut off their connection with the 2 wheels. From now on, they would no longer be able to control them at will. Even if they managed to retrieve them, they would need a long period of nourishment and purification. Due to the omniscient mirror, the power of the sun chakram and the moon chakram was greatly reduced in front of Chu Li. However, it was a terrifying killing weapon to others. Very few people could avoid the sun chakram and the moon chakram, so the destruction of such a weapon was no different from cutting off one of their arms. Although they had a profound cultivation level of Buddhism, they could not help but feel infuriated. Their murderous intent burned as they wanted to kill Chu Li with a single palm strike. They were extremely ruthless. Woo-woo! The sun chakram suddenly appeared. It was no longer hidden in the void and the sunlight. Instead, it moved even faster and let out a shrill whistle. Yuru's face turned pale again as her blood boiled. She bit her lip and took out a jade flute from her sleeve. She placed it next to her mouth and gently played it. Suddenly, the melodious sound of the flute was heard and fought against the shrill whistle. Chu had the Mahavairokkana's immobility scripture, so he remained unmoved. However, the two old monks had to divert their attention to resist the sound of the flute, so the power of their palms was greatly reduced. Chu tossed the two wheels into the house. Then, he broke the window and entered the house. Once again, he shot out flying blade. Ding, 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 ding. For more holes appeared on their red robes before they were sent flying. Their armors could block the flying blades, but they could not nullify the extraordinary power contained in the flying blade. Not only was Chu Li's inner energy profound, but his blade force was also pure. Due to the giant spirit pill, his strength was far beyond ordinary people's imagination. Not only did the blades contain blade force, but they also contained pure barbarian energy, which they could not nullify. Ding, 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 ding. Several energy blades struck the sun chakrams down. While he collected the flying blades on the ground, he took the two wheels into his hand. He nullified the two old monks' thoughts and immediately tamed them. Namo Amitabha. The two old monks chanted the name of Buddha. Their faces darkened as they stared at the two sun chakrams in Chu Li's hands. Chapter 3240. How shameless! How can a disciple of the reincarnation temple be so shameless? Yuru frowned and scoffed. Chu Li replied, "That's what a disciple of the reincarnation temple does. Let's go." "Big brother Zhao, you should go back. He won't be coming again this time," Yuru said. "You don't have to accompany me." Chu Li shook his head. "That might not be the case. It's better to be careful when dealing with a despicable person like him." "All right." Yuru nodded slowly. She was now extremely afraid of Monk Zhishan. The strange palm force was still rampaging in her body and worsening her injuries. Chu Li suddenly reached out and gently placed his hand on her shoulder. Instantly, a palm force entered her body. This palm force was like a clear spring that flowed through her internal organs and healed her internal injuries. Then, it collided with the ever-changing palm force. When the two palm forces collided, they disappeared without a trace, as if they had never been there. Monk Zhishan's cultivation level had multiplied and his palm force was pure, but he was still no match for Chu Li. After all, Chu Li had not eaten the sky-soaring pill for nothing. His cultivation level was far higher than Monk Zhishan's. Yuru smiled and nodded at him. The two of them strolled along the street and slowly returned to Phoenix Goddess Restaurant. This restaurant looked exactly the same as the Phoenix Goddess brothel in Gale City. It was obvious that they were owned by the same family. Yuru did not invite him up because she knew that he wanted to go back and clean up the battlefield. Chu Li returned to one of the rooms in the branch and picked up the two sets of sun and moon wheels to examine them. The patterns on them were faint and gave off a mysterious feeling as if they contained endless secrets. He had previously obtained a set of sun and moon wheels from Monk Zhishan, but he did not know how to use them. Monk Zhishan had always used the sun and moon wheels as a shield but kept them as a trump card. Chu Li had not been able to force Monk Zhishan to use this trump card. Therefore, he did not know how to use them. Now that he saw the two monks, Yuan Wu and Yuan Jing, controlling them, he finally understood how powerful they were. Unfortunately, the two monks were protected by treasured weapons, so he could not see through their minds and learn the heart technique to control them. He wondered if the prayer beads they took out were the treasured weapons they carried with them. If that was the case, then he would be able to see the method to control them from their minds and obtain more secrets of the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture. His current level of the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture was not high enough. When he fought with Wei Wuwei, it was slow and strenuous for him to dissolve the palm force. It was no longer of much use. He had always wanted to raise its level. The last time he obtained the Buddha beads in the stargazing pavilion was because of this. Unfortunately, he had not been able to find the wonders of the Buddha bead. This time, he exchanged the Buddha beads with the two monks for two reasons. First, he wanted to try his luck and see if the Buddha beads were their protective treasures. Second, he wanted to see if he could comprehend the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture from their Buddha beads and advance to the next level. In the next moment, he appeared outside a house in the branch and stood in front of Monk Zhishan. Bam! Both of their palms collided and froze. The two of them exchanged palm forces between their palms and attacked each other. Chuli was not in a hurry to use his full strength. His intuition told him that his only opportunity lay with Monk Zhishan. Monk Zhishan stared at him with a frown and shook his head. "I didn't expect your cultivation level to be this high." Chuli smiled. "I have some understanding of the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture, just like you. You're indeed a genius to be able to cultivate the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture to this level. I'm impressed." Monk Zhishan scoffed and his palm energy changed faster. He felt that his inner energy did not have the upper hand. The two of them were evenly matched. If he wanted to win, he would have to use the changes of the reincarnation palm energy to restrain Chuli and injure him before killing him. Chuli asked, "How do you comprehend the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture?" "I don't mind telling you," Monk Zhishan said. "There's a reincarnation pagoda in our temple. If you enter the pagoda to comprehend the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture, you'll get twice the result with half the effort. Without this pagoda, no matter how powerful you are, you won't be able to cultivate the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture to a high level. Zhao Dave, no matter how powerful you are, you won't be able to enter the reincarnation pagoda, haha." He laughed out loud and looked at Chuli with a mocking expression. Chuli frowned and scoffed. "The reincarnation temple, no wonder. Do you think that relying on external objects isn't an ability?" Monk Zhishan laughed. "The reincarnation temple is like a raft to cross the river. Without a raft, you won't be able to swim to the other side no matter how powerful you are. This means that you're not lucky enough. You should just accept your fate." As he spoke, he increased the change of his palm energy. Chuli scoffed and his palm energy suddenly changed to restrain Monk Zhishan's palm energy. Then, the palm energy went straight into his body and entered his organs. Monk Zhishan spat out a mouthful of blood and flew a few dozen feet away. Then, a red shadow flashed and disappeared. Chuli frowned and did not chase after him. It was not time to kill Monk Zhishan yet. He had to get the Buddha beads first. These 2 strings of Buddha beads have been passed down for 1,000 years. Monk Yuan Wu handed the 2 strings of shiny Buddha beads to Chuli and said, "I hope that you can take good care of these 2 strings of Buddha beads and not let them gather dust." Chuli smiled. "Of course, I'll treasure these treasures. Don't worry." "I hope so." Yuan Wu and Yuan Jing reluctantly shifted their gaze from the Buddha beads to Chuli's face. Chuli took out 2 sets of sun and moon wheels from his sleeve and handed them to them. "These are yours." He was a little disappointed. The Buddha beads were not their protective treasures. They still had treasures to protect themselves and could not see through their mind. It would be difficult for him to cripple the 2 of them when they were together. Moreover, Monk Zhishan was eyeing them covetously and wanted to take advantage of the situation. Chuli could only give up on this idea and set his sights on Monk Zhishan. After receiving the sun and moon wheels, the 2 of them looked gloomy. They had the sun and moon wheels in their hands, but they could not sense them. Their connection had been completely severed, and they had to start all over again. They did not know how long it would take for them to return to normal. It would take a lot of effort and time. Chuli smiled. "Are you sure?" "Yes." Yuan Wu took a deep breath to suppress the nameless hellfire and said, "Priest Zhao is indeed powerful." Chuli chuckled. "Do you still dare to fight me without them?" We'll return to the temple immediately and never come out again. Yuan Wu said, Congratulations, Priest Zhao. Chu Li smiled. Is the reincarnation temple going to give up? Yuan Wu smiled and shook his head. There will be more powerful masters coming. You're not the most powerful. Chu Li was surprised. Our martial arts are ordinary, Yuan Wu said calmly. My senior brother, Yuan Kong, is the real master. I hope you can escape from my senior brother. Namo Amitba, I'll take my leave. After he finished speaking, he fluttered away with Yuan Jing. Chu Li frowned and did not say anything. The reincarnation temple was endless. After defeating one, there would be another. How troublesome. It seemed like he had to teach them a lesson. At this thought, Chu Li's killing intent surged and disappeared. The next moment, he appeared in a courtyard opposite the Phoenix Goddess brothel. Monk Zhishan was cultivating. When he saw Chu Li, he chuckled and pounced on him without hesitation. He wanted to kill Chu Li once and for all. Chu Li had the same intention too. The two of them did not say a word. Bang-bang sounds were incessant as their palm energies collided. Chapter 32-41. Chu Li quickly suppressed Monk Zhishan. He did not use the light blade because Monk Zhishan was wearing an armor that could block the light blade. Moreover, the head and throat were the most responsive parts of the body, so it would be difficult to hit them. He did not want to waste his time and used the divine light fist to block the attack. The Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture could convert fist force. Monk Zhishan's Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture was at a higher level than Chu Li's. Therefore, even though Chu Li's inner energy was better than his, Monk Zhishan was still able to block Chu Li without getting hurt. Chu Li did not panic and threw more than 100 punches in one go. Even though Monk Zhishan could convert fist force, he still found it difficult. Chu Li's fist force seemed endless and his inner energy seemed inexhaustible. Every time the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture converted, his fist force would be converted into the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture's inner energy to replenish his consumption. It was a wonderful technique. However, under Chu Li's 100 or so divine light fist strikes, this advantage had turned into a disadvantage. Every time, the converted fist force would be replenished. It was fine at first, but as time went on, his inner energy became overflowing. His body swelled up like a balloon that was filled with air. As the air grew, he felt like he was about to explode. In the end, he felt that he would have to bear the consequences if he did not release his inner energy. Therefore, he stopped the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture and directly used the Reincarnation Palm to fight Chu Li. Bang! 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 The fist and palm collided 3 times in a row. The muffled sound was louder and louder, like the sound of a wooden stake hitting a stone. It was not ear-piercing, but it shook one's soul. Pfft! Monk Zhishan suddenly flew backward and spat out a mouthful of black blood. His eyes widened in disbelief. He did not expect Chu Li to plot against him. This last palm was extremely strange. It was activated by Chu Li's blood jade palm. It was pure and powerful. Monk Zhishan tried to activate the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture, but it was too late. After the blood jade palm entered his organs, it instantly messed up the blood flow in his organs. As his blood flow was messed up, so was his inner energy. The Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture could not be converted successfully and his body could not help but stagnate in the air. Chu Li appeared behind him in a flash and hit him with his palm again. Pop! When the blood jade palm struck again, it sounded like a pebble being thrown into a lake. It was as if the palm energy had been poured into his blood. Monk Zhishan missed every step. He wanted to avoid it, but he was powerless. The blood jade palm force instantly penetrated his internal organs and entered his blood, causing his blood to boil. Chu Li did not seem to have exerted much force in his blood jade palm, as he did not manage to send Monk Zhishan flying. Instead, Monk Zhishan fell straight to the ground. All of Chu Li's palm force had been withdrawn and entered the blood flowing in his body, causing his blood to flow in reverse. Once his blood flowed in the opposite direction, his entire body was on the verge of collapse. His vision went black, and he felt weak and powerless. Even if he had extremely deep inner force, it was useless. He couldn't use it at all when his mind was in a bad state. Chu Li reached out to cripple him. Stop! Two silhouettes shot towards Chu Li's back like arrows released from a bow. One of them wielded a blade while the other wielded a sword. The blade gleamed like a waterfall as it slashed towards Chu Li's neck, while the sword gleamed like a cold star as it shot towards his back. Chu Li frowned. Although he was able to cripple Monk Zhishan, he would not be able to evade the joint attack of these two men. Judging from their speed and power, their attacks would definitely be terrifying. His Vajra indestructible divine power might not be able to withstand them, so he should not take the risk. He disappeared in a flash and reappeared behind the two of them with a palm strike. The two of them reacted very quickly. They changed their attacks from the front to the back and stabbed at him. Ding ding! One of Chu Li's palms hit the body of the sword, while the other hit the blade. Both the sword and the blade were knocked away and a clear sound was heard. The two of them flew 20 meters in the air before they landed on the ground and frowned at Chu Li. Monk Zhishan took the opportunity to escape and went to their side. Chu Li sized up the two men. The two men were in their 20s. The one with the sword was handsome, while the one with the blade was rough and bold. Their eyes were so bright that no one dared to look them in the eye. Both of them had extraordinary cultivation levels and were only slightly inferior to Monk Zhishan. Chu Li frowned and scoffed. Who are you? Tell me your names. Nie Hua from Hai Tsong Mountain. Hu Jianxin from Royal Blade Palace. Monk Zhishan stood behind the two men and bowed with pressed palms. Namo Amitba. Thank you for saving me, almsgivers. You don't have to be so polite, Monk Zhishan. We're not outsiders. The two men waved their hands. They sized up Chu Li and asked, Who is he? This is Priest Zhao Dai from the Holy Church of Light. Monk Zhishan wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and smiled. He's a genius among geniuses. Our martial arts are no match for this priest Zhao. You're Zhao Dai, Hu Jianxin said casually. You're so famous. You should be proud of yourself for becoming a priest at such a young age. However, you're quite bold too. How dare you destroy our branch? Chu Li said. Everyone, if you can destroy our branch, isn't it reasonable for us to destroy yours? Are we supposed to just sit back and do nothing? That makes sense. Hu Jianxin chuckled. It's only right for us to seek revenge. It's only right for us to seek revenge, right? Let's kill you first. Monk Zhishan, Brother Nye, let's do it. Do it. Monk Zhishan said. The three men pounced at Chu Li. Chu Li shook his head and suddenly shot out two flying blades. Ding ding. One of them swung his sword while the other swung his blade. Both of them blocked the flying blades. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. Although they were more than 20 meters apart, his light blade was extremely fast. It was rare for them to block the flying blades. This meant that not only were their cultivation levels high, but their sword techniques and blade techniques were also very sharp. In a flash, Chu Li disappeared from where he was and appeared next to Monk Zhishan. Pop! Chu Li's blood jade palm collided with Monk Zhishan. Monk Zhishan was sent flying. He used the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture to neutralize the blood jade palm. He was prepared and kept using the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture to neutralize the blood jade palm. Chu Li felt that it was a pity. It was a rare opportunity. If it were not for these two men, he would have crippled Monk Zhishan and learned the secrets of the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture from his mind. Ding. A cold light flashed on Chu Li's waist and he deflected a sword. The sword contained an extremely strong force. Niehua's long sword was about to fall out of his hand. He quickly flew away to neutralize the force on the sword. Hu Jianxin saw that the situation was not good. He swung his blade as if he was going to split Chu Li in half. Chu Li moved sideways to avoid the blade. The tip of the sword had already pierced Monk Zhishan's palm. Monk Zhishan did not expect Chu Li to use his sword. He was caught off guard and could not withdraw his palm in time. His right palm was hit by the sword and he let out a muffled groan. The tip of the sword penetrated his right palm. Monk Zhishan's expression was grim. He hit the tip of the sword with his left palm. Chu Li spun his sword and stabbed forward. He destroyed Monk Zhishan's right palm and met his left palm. Monk Zhishan dared not take Chu Li's sword head-on. He could only withdraw his left palm. His right palm was already showing his white bones. He was in so much pain that he almost fainted. Chu Li did not wait for Niehua and Hu Jianxin to react. He suddenly let go and hit Monk Zhishan's lower abdomen with his right palm. Monk Zhishan spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying. Chapter 3242. Pft. Monk Zhishan spat out a mouthful of blood as his expression changed drastically. Even though Chu Li had eliminated most of the palm energy, the remaining palm energy was still enough to severely injure Monk Zhishan. His dantian was the most vulnerable part of his body, so half of Chu Li's palm energy was enough to severely injure him. Monk Zhishan's original injuries were almost healed. The Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture's recovery speed was unimaginable. With the rotation of yin and yang and the reversal of positive and negative, Monk Zhishan was quickly healed. When Chu Li was blocked by the disciples of Hai Tsang Mountain and Royal Blade Palace, his killing intent surged. Without holding back, he sped up his body movement technique and increased his palm energy. Monk Zhishan could not withstand it. "Stop!" Hu Jianxin roared as he brandished his blade. Niehua's delicate face was covered in a layer of frost. His gaze was ice-cold as his killing intent surged. At the speed of lightning, his sword flashed toward Chu Li. They were also disciples of the sect. He took out 2 strings of Buddha beads from his inner pocket and shook them before putting them back into his inner pocket. Monk Zhishan frowned. "Those are the Reincarnation Temple's Buddha beads." Chu Li smiled. "Yes. You actually have our Buddha beads." Monk Zhishan shook his head. However, being able to comprehend the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture from the Buddha beads has never happened before. "Looks like I'm in luck." Chu Li smiled. "Monk Zhishan, do you think someone will save you?" Of course, Chu Li could tell that Monk Zhishan was trying to stall for time. He was waiting for a chance to survive. However, Chu Li was not prepared to give Monk Zhishan another chance. He could not see if the Buddha beads in Monk Zhishan's mind could help him comprehend martial arts. Hence, there was no point in keeping them. Monk Zhishan sighed. "I've finally woken up from this dream. Come on." Chu Li suddenly swung his blade twice. The cold light penetrated Monk Zhishan's head and he died instantly. Chapter 3243. Chu Li stood in front of Monk Zhishan's corpse and shook his head. There was a tinge of regret in his heart, but he was more delighted. At the end of the day, Li Ruolan's death was caused by Monk Zhishan. Monk Zhishan had been suppressing his anger for too long. Today, he had finally taken his revenge. He felt his entire body relax, and he felt inexplicably happy. His heavenly heart technique had improved slightly. Monk Zhishan had great comprehension, and his way of thinking was different from ordinary people. He was a lunatic. If he became a top-notch master and surpassed Chu Li, not only would Chu Li suffer, but the people around him would also suffer. However, Chu Li also understood that he would have to face the crazy revenge of the Reincarnation Temple after killing Monk Zhishan. Monk Zhishan was their top youth master and the future pillar of the Reincarnation Temple. they would not let him off easily. Despite knowing this, Chu Li still killed Monk Zhishan. He felt extremely delighted. This was the only way to live a carefree and joyful life. He took out 2 solar discs and lunar discs from Monk Zhishan's sleeve. Then, he lifted Monk Zhishan and glided away. In the evening, the setting sun made Jiren Temple look solemn. Chu Li arrived outside Jiren Temple amidst the colorful lights and Sanskrit chants. There were many worshippers who looked at Chu Li curiously. Bang! Monk Zhishan's corpse fell in front of the temple. The 2 reception monks at the door knew that Monk Zhishan was a disciple of the Reincarnation Temple when they saw his bright red robe. When they saw his face, their expressions changed and they ran into the temple. A moment later, an old monk in a red robe came in a hurry surrounded by other monks in gray. He went out of the temple and stood in front of Monk Zhishan. When he saw his face, he lowered his head and pressed his palms together. Namo Amitabha. His voice was calm and solemn, which made people calm down. He squatted down and touched Monk Zhishan's wrist before he stood up and looked at Chu Li. Chu Li said, "Although Monk Zhishan deserved to die, the dead cannot be left in the wild. You can deal with it yourselves." The old monk's red robe fluttered in the wind as he said slowly with a sullen expression, "Almsgiver Zhao, you're so ruthless." Chu Li said, "No matter how ruthless I am, I'm still far from Monk Zhishan. Alright, I've sent him here. As for how the Reincarnation Temple wants to take revenge, come at me directly. I'll be waiting." Then, he turned and left. "Abbot!" All the monks shouted in unison, their anger filled. The old monk in red waved his hand and said in a deep voice, "Cremate Zhishan first." Yes. The monks pressed their palms together unwillingly and glared angrily at Chu Li who had just left. Chu Li's actions were truly arrogant and egotistical. After killing someone, not only did he not escape, but he also came straight to the Reincarnation Temple. This was truly a provocation to the Reincarnation Temple. If they did not kill him, they would not be able to maintain the dignity of the Reincarnation Temple. Chu Li glided forward with a smile on his face. As expected, the Heavenly Heart Mantra's heart-tempering method required one to have a clear mind. It actually had a hint of the Heavenly Demon Scripture's shadow. It required one to do one's best and not be suppressed or restricted. After doing this, he felt that his Heavenly Heart Sutra had improved a little. If he continued doing this, he would have a chance to reach the 10th level. Once the Heavenly Heart technique was perfected, he would go to Goddess Attraction Mountain to learn the dragon taming technique, and then find the last few levels of the Spirit Crane technique. Once he found the remaining few mental cultivation methods and perfected them all, he would be able to become an enlightened master. He had never been in a hurry to look for the Spirit Crane incantation. Without the dragon taming technique, everything would be meaningless. No matter how much he cultivated it, he would never become an enlightened master. The next morning, when he woke up and went to the martial arts field, he saw a middle-aged monk standing in the field. His red robe fluttered in the wind as he looked at him calmly. When he saw him, the middle-aged monk pressed his palms together and said calmly, "Namo Amitabha, Almsgiver Zhao, I Yuan Kong, have been ordered to take your life and send you into reincarnation." Chu Li sized up this tall and craggy middle-aged monk. He had a lion's nose and a wide mouth, and he looked majestic. His hands were especially large, and when he pressed his palms together, they looked like cattail leaf fans. Chu Li could tell at a glance that his hands had cultivated a special skill, which was different from ordinary martial arts. Chu Li asked, "Are you going to avenge Monk Zhishan?" Yuan Kong pressed his palms together and said calmly, "The life and death of the disciples of the Reincarnation Temple is normal, but life and death are all in one's own hands. One can come and go freely and no one can interfere. Almsgiver Zhao has killed apprentice nephew Zhishan, so naturally you have to be punished. Namo Amitabha." Chu Li smiled. "Then why talk so much? Just do it." Namo Amitba. Monk Yuan Kong chanted the name of Buddha again, and pushed out his palm with his fan-like right hand slowly. Chu Li extended his palm to meet it. Bang! Chu Li was sent flying and crashed into the wall behind him. Monk Yuan Kong's palm energy was like a giant hammer that hit his internal organs. Chu Li did not have time to block it, and the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture did not work. He was already severely injured. He had never seen such an overbearing palm energy before. Spiritual energy surged from all directions and healed his injuries. Using the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture in reverse, the two worked together and healed most of his injuries, leaving only minor injuries. Monk Yuan Kong leaped to Chu Li's side and attacked again. Chu Li was embedded in the wall. He stomped his feet and shot toward Yuan Kong. He clenched his right hand into a divine light fist and punched. Bang! Chu Li crashed into the wall again. The wall shook and cracks appeared. Chu Li spat out a mouthful of blood and felt his chest relax. The surging spiritual energy and the circulation of the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture sped up the healing of his injuries. Since he was prepared this time, his injuries were not as serious. He still could not block Monk Yuan Kong's palm energy. The Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture seemed to have lost its effect in the face of this palm energy. Hence, he swung both his hands. The flying blades were shot at Monk Yuan Kong's throat in an instant. Ding-ding sounds were heard. The two blades were blocked by his fan-like right hand and fell to the ground as if they had hit a rock. Chu Li frowned and disappeared. He stood 100 feet away and scoffed. Monk Yuan Kong, what palm energy is this? Spiritual energy surged toward him. The Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture circulated and healed his injuries quickly. He wanted to return to his peak condition. This palm energy was comparable to the blood jade palm. Monk Yuan Kong muttered, Sumeru palm. What a powerful Sumeru palm. Chu Li shook his head. If Monk Zhishan had cultivated this palm technique, he wouldn't have died in my hands. Monk Yuan Kong remained calm and was not provoked by Chu Li. He said slowly, cultivating this palm technique requires hard work and painstaking effort. It takes 60 years to achieve a small success. Although junior nephew Zhishan is extremely talented and has extraordinary comprehension, he has no fate with this palm technique. Chu Li asked, Isn't there a shortcut? Monk Yuan Kong shook his head. If there's a shortcut, it wouldn't be Sumeru palm. What is Sumeru palm? Chu Li became more interested. His path was different from Monk Zhishan's. Cultivating martial arts was like walking. Monk Zhishan was talented and had a high comprehension. He walked ahead of others because he took shortcuts. On the other hand, Chu Li's aptitude was not that good. The reason why he could cultivate so quickly was because he had the help of the spirit pill. Moreover, his inner energy circulation was several times faster than the average person. Hence, the path he took was the same as the others, just that he walked faster. If he had the secret manual of Sumeru palm, he would not need to cultivate for so long. He would only need a few years to achieve a small success. By then, its power would be even more shocking. Is this palm technique secretly passed down in the reincarnation temple? Chu Li asked. Monk Yuan Kong smiled. Almsgiver Zhao, you don't need to know this. You're going to reincarnate today. He pushed his palm forward again. Chapter 3245. A moment after Su Ru left, Shao Qi and Shao Shi hurried over. They were dressed in snow-white gowns and their bodies exuded a faint fragrance. The people from the Sword Moon sect are here? Shao Shi asked with a frown. Chu Li nodded. Shao Qi asked, What are the disciples of the Sword Moon sect doing here? Nothing good. Shao Shi scoffed. Chao Xian is dead. They suspect that I killed him. Chu Li smiled. They want me to personally go to the Sword Moon sect to defend myself. Shao Qi stared at him with her bright eyes. You killed him, didn't you? Chu Li smiled and nodded. Shao Qi sighed. Shao Shi smiled. He should have been killed. But now that we've been discovered, what should we do? Chu Li replied, I didn't give myself away. The Sword Moon sect is very capable. We can't underestimate them. Shao Qi frowned. I'm just afraid that they won't care if you're the real murderer or not. They'll vent their anger on you and would rather kill the wrong person than let them go. Then we'll run. Chu Li smiled. He said it so casually as if the Sword Moon sect was not a dangerous place. The two women were not fooled by his casual tone. They frowned and stared at him. They knew how powerful he was. Chu Li shook his head and smiled. Unfortunately, the monk can run away, but the temple can't. He was not afraid of the Sword Moon sect. If he could not defeat them, he could run. However, if they were to attack the imperial residence of King En and the public house, he would not be able to do anything. No matter how strong he was, he did not know how to split himself. He could not protect every place. Chapter 3246. After a while, the person who went to report came down and fist saluted. Chief Chu, please go up the mountain. Chu Li fist saluted. Thank you. The other young man in purple opened his eyes and fist saluted, then closed his eyes and said nothing. The two young men in purple were well-mannered and did not make a faux pas. However, Chu Li could tell that they did not value him but looked down on him. They did not even bother to talk to him or waste their energy. They treated him like a dead man who could not leave the Sword Moon sect alive. Chu Li frowned. It seemed that the Sword Moon sect was really overbearing. He had seen many of the 8 major sects in the Fu dynasty. Most of them were overbearing and overbearing. There were very few sects like the Virgin Palace. They had a kind of pride in their bones and did not respect others. Seeing that Chu Li did not move, the young man in purple said, Chief Chu, follow this path up the mountain. There will be someone to receive you. Thank you. Chu Li fist saluted and slowly walked up the stone step. The stone steps led to the top of the mountain with no end in sight. Every stone step was made of bluestone. After years of vicissitudes and polishing, the sides were covered in moss while the front was polished to the point that one could see one's reflection. Seeing that Chu Li's figure was getting further away, the young man in purple opened his eyes and shook his head. Another one who wants to die. It can't be helped. He's junior brother Chao's enemy. What a pity. There's nothing to pity about. There have been so many people like him dying in the mountains. It's a pity that he wasn't born in the Fu dynasty. If he was born in the Fu dynasty, he's probably already a disciple of the Sword Moon sect. It's rare to have such a cultivation level in the wilderness of the Ji dynasty. It can't be helped that he's unlucky. Who's in charge of killing him? The young man in purple asked with his eyes closed. Senior Brother Nian. The other young man in purple said, with Senior Brother Nian, we'll definitely succeed. It's useless no matter how powerful he is. Actually, we should let Senior Brother Wen do it. It's safer. I don't think this guy is easy to deal with. Senior Brother Wen is in isolated cultivation. He was agitated when he met the guy from the Holy Church of Light. The Holy Church of Light has a powerful guy, Zhao Dave. He's close to the stargazing pavilion. I wonder what they're up to. They've always been unpredictable. But to be able to force Senior Brother Wen into isolated cultivation, he's really something. If Senior Brother Wen makes a move, there will be no mistakes. I think Senior Brother Nian is enough. Although Chu Li had walked far away, he could clearly see what was going on in their mind. He shook his head. It seemed like they really did not want to give him a way out. In that case, he could go all out and barge into the Sword Moon sect and kill everyone there. After walking for more than 1,000 steps, a small pavilion appeared beside him. It had overhanging eaves and hanging corners, giving it an antique feel. There was a stone table in the pavilion, and a handsome young man sat beside it. His purple clothes fluttered in the wind, causing his face to seem like jade. His lips were red, his teeth were white, and his eyes were like cold stars. The young man was sipping a cup of tea and looking at him with a smile. Chu arrived at the gazebo and sat across the stone table. The handsome young man smiled and said, "I'm Nianfeng, a disciple of the Sword Moon sect. You must be Chu, right?" "That's me." Chu nodded. "Are you here to kill me?" "That's right." Nianfeng nodded slightly. "The sect's orders must be obeyed. I hope Brother Chu won't blame me." Hee, Chu laughed. "That's what I wanted to say too. You wanted to kill me, so it's only right that I kill you." "How arrogant, I like it." Nianfeng laughed and put down his teacup. He stood up and drew his sword. "Junior brother Chao died in your hands, we'll naturally avenge him. Whether Chao Xian died in my hands or not, you'll still want to kill me. Why bother looking for excuses?" Chu shook his head. "But you'll die in my hands. TSS. Nianfeng's figure suddenly blurred, as if he had turned into a shadow. A ray of light from his sword had already pierced Chu-Li's chest. Ding! The tip of Chu-Li's sword was already in front of his chest. Nianfeng's sword trembled involuntarily, and his body stiffened. He felt a strange force coming from his sword, and his body instantly went numb and uncontrollable. He could only watch as the tip of Chu-Li's sword pierced his throat. The sword force entered his brain from his throat. His vision instantly darkened, and he died in an instant. He could not be any more dead. Chu-Li slowly drew his sword out of its scabbard and glanced 100 meters above the steps. There were 2 young men in purple robes there. Initially, they were going to deal with his corpse, but now they were going to deal with Nianfeng's corpse. Nianfeng was also a rising star in the Sword Moon sect. He was second only to Wen Tingdao among the younger generation of disciples. Everyone thought that he would definitely be able to kill Chu-Li. "Senior brother Nian." The 2 of them instantly widened their eyes as they screamed. Chu-Li calmly looked at them and continued to walk up the step. The 2 of them turned around and ran. Their figures blurred for a moment before disappearing. Their body movement technique was extremely fast. Chu-Li went up another 500 steps and arrived at another pagoda. A middle-aged man in purple robes sat by the stone table in the pagoda. He looked ordinary and would not be noticed if he stood in the crowd. His eyes were shooting cold lightning as he glared at Chu-Li as if he was trying to see through him. When he saw Chu-Li step into the pagoda, he opened his mouth to speak. Chu-Li waved his hand to cut him off. "There's no need to say anything. Just do it." The middle-aged man in purple held his breath. Instead of venting his anger, he became even more enraged. His eyes began to turn red as blood vessels quickly filled his eyes. The cold lightning that shot out from his eyes seemed to pierce Chu-Li. Chu-Li slowly drew his sword. "There's no need to tell me your name. I never remember the names of dead people. You're courting death." The middle-aged man in purple gritted his teeth. Then, a cold lightning suddenly appeared behind Chu-Li, and the tip of the sword was about to reach his body. Ding! Chu-Li's sword was already blocking his back. The vibrating blade of the sword bounced off the body of the middle-aged man in purple and let out a clear sound. The middle-aged man in purple suddenly froze. His expression changed and he desperately channeled his inner energy. When Chu-Li's sword was about to reach his throat, he had already regained control of his body. Just as he was about to dodge, an invisible finger force struck him and his body froze again. Chu-Li used the petrifying finger at the same time he stabbed with his sword. Chi! The tip of Chu-Li's sword pierced through his throat. The gray tip of the sword appeared behind him, and there was not a single drop of blood on the blade. The strange sword force crushed his brain and he died instantly. Chu-Li slowly drew his sword and looked up at the 2 young men 100 meters away. He shook his head. "Senior brother Song. The two of them were shocked and furious. They turned around and ran. Chu Li smiled. His cultivation level was not what it used to be. Although he could not run amok in the Fu dynasty, he was not far from it. He would be fine as long as he did not run into people like Wei Wuwei. There were only 4 or 5 people like Wei Wuwei among the 8 major sects of the Fu dynasty. Although this senior brother Song and Yen Feng were masters of their sects, they were far weaker than Wei Wuwei. They were like children in front of Chu Li. Chu Li killed them as easily as cutting melons and vegetables. He continued to go up. After 100 steps, an old man with white eyebrows and beard floated down from the stairs. He wore a purple robe and his face was pale as if he was injured. He was as thin as a skeleton and stared at Chu Li with his green eyes like a wolf's. Chu Li stopped and looked at the old man. "Young man, you killed Yen Feng and Song Jiqing." The old man in purple robe let out a hoarse and unpleasant voice. Chu Li said calmly, "Yes." "Then you shall die too." The old man's loose robe fluttered in the wind. The long sword at his waist slowly stabbed towards Chu Li. His movements were slow and his moves were simple. Chapter 3247. A cattail hassock was placed in a majestic basilica. A tall elder sat on the cattail hassock like a mountain. His eyebrows were white and his long eyebrows drooped to the corner of his mouth, connecting with his beard. His face was as red as a baby's. Hurried footsteps were heard. He slowly opened his eyes and glared at the middle-aged man who pushed open the basilica door and entered. The middle-aged man was dressed in purple and had a jade-like face. His brows were tightly knitted as he walked over and cupped his fists. "Elder, that brat is very tough. He killed Yen Feng and Song Jiqing and is currently fighting with senior brother Jin Siquang." "Xiao Jin is attacking?" the elder asked slowly. "Chu Li is not to be underestimated. How can we let him continue to show off?" The middle-aged man shook his head. "If we can't kill him this time, we'll be too ashamed. The Ji dynasty has such a character." The elder shook his head. "Every dog has its day. Looks like the Ji dynasty is going to prosper. That's why we have to kill him. If he's allowed to grow, it'll be troublesome." The elder nodded in satisfaction. "We won't fail this time, right? Senior Jin has 200 years of cultivation. No matter how powerful Chu Li is, he won't be able to stop him." "That's good," the elder said slowly. "I hope there won't be any accidents." The man smiled. "Don't worry, elder. Although Senior Jin seems to be violent, he's actually very meticulous. He won't fail miserably. Just listen to the good news." The elder nodded. "You're right to be careful." "Yes." The man sighed. Chu Li was only in his 20s. Their previous arrangement was for a master in his 30s to kill him. They felt that this was the most appropriate method. Not only would they be able to kill Chu Li, but they would also let the disciples know how powerful Chu Li was. This would prevent them from becoming arrogant and thinking that there was not a single master in a remote place like the Ji dynasty. Unfortunately, he had underestimated that brat. He did not expect that Yen Feng would not be able to kill him, and instead, Yen Feng would be killed. Later on, he sent a master who had lived for 60 years, but it still did not succeed. He did not want to damage the disciples' confidence too much, so he directly sent a 200-year-old master, his own senior brother Jin Siquang. However, it was a major event for experts over 100 years old to make a move. Even within the sect, experts over 100 years old would not easily make a move. He was worried that the elder would make a fuss over nothing and act rashly, so he came to explain. The sound of hurried footsteps could be heard as a purple-robed youth stood outside the hall. The purple-robed middle-aged man frowned. "What is it?" "Sixth Martial Uncle, Chu Li won again." The purple-robed youth cupped his fists and said. He lowered his head, not daring to look into the hall. This was Martial Granduncle's seclusion hall, and disciples were forbidden from approaching. However, Martial Uncle had already arrived, and in order to pass on the news, he could only come over to report. This matter was really too urgent and could not be delayed. "Your Martial Uncle Jean lost?" the purple-robed middle-aged man asked in a low voice. "Yes, Martial Uncle Jean is dead." "Nonsense." "Yes." The purple-robed young man hurriedly bowed, not daring to say another word. How could Chu Li possibly kill Brother Jean? The purple-robed middle-aged man shouted in disbelief. The purple-robed youth remained silent. The old man with white eyebrows and beard said in a deep voice, "Interesting. We've underestimated this young man. If he's really a genius, then all the more reason to kill him. Otherwise, we'll be harmed instead, and there will be endless troubles in the future." "Yes." The purple-robed middle-aged man's face darkened, and he cupped his fists and said, "Elder, I'll do it myself." "No, I'll do it myself." The old man with white eyebrows and beard slowly stood up. "Elder." The purple-robed middle-aged man was shocked. "You'll do it?" "That's right." The old man nodded and said, "You can defeat Xiao Jin, and he can also defeat Xiao Jin. Are you confident that you can kill him?" The purple-robed middle-aged man was silent, and finally, he shook his head and sighed. He was also considered a genius of his generation. Other than junior brother Duan, who was in seclusion, he was the strongest. However, compared to the martial uncles in the sect, who were almost 300 years old, he was still a notch lower. Master Cheng was far better than him. The martial arts of the Sword Moon sect and the Church of the Divine Blood were different. Other than inner power, swordsmanship was more important. Grandmasters did not necessarily have strong inner energy just because they were older. Every grandmaster had their own limit. Their bodies were like bottles, and everyone was a bottle of different sizes. Most of the time, they would reach their limits after they were over 100 years old. Some of them were around 200 years old. After that, they would need to calm down and pursue purity in order to break through their limit. Swordsmanship was different from inner energy cultivation. There was no end to it, and the more one was trained, the more powerful it would be. Therefore, it was difficult for a disciple of the Sword Moon sect to be as talented as Wei Wuwei, who could suppress the elders at such a young age. Although Master Cheng's swordsmanship was not the best in the sect, it was already in the top 10. No matter how powerful Chu Li was, he would not be able to escape. Cheng Hui slowly said, "Let's go." "Elder, are you really going to do it?" The purple-robed middle-aged man sighed and said, "You're giving him too much credit. If we don't give him some credit, who knows how many disciples will suffer." Cheng Hui shook his head and slowly walked out of the basilica. Outside, the purple-robed young man was standing with his head lowered, motionless like a statue. Cheng Hui took a step forward and suddenly disappeared. The purple-robed middle-aged man said in a deep voice, "Go and collect your master's senior Jin's corpse and settle it down properly." "Yes," the purple-robed young man hurriedly said. The purple-robed middle-aged man left like a stream of light and disappeared in an instant. When he came to a pagoda, Chu Li and Cheng Hui were already fighting. The sword light was like lightning, enveloping the two of them. He squinted his eyes and sized up Chu Li, his expression becoming more and more unpleasant. Chu Li's swordsmanship did not seem to be fast. Every sword move was clear, but it was slow against fast. Even if Cheng Hui was as fast as lightning and every move was fatal, Chu Li still steadily defended himself and was not restrained at all. In terms of swordsmanship, the two of them were actually evenly matched, and Chu Li was not at a disadvantage at all. If he went up, he would definitely not be Chu Li's opponent. How did Chu Li have such a profound swordsmanship at such a young age? Chu Li swung his sword calmly, his expression calm. He felt unprecedentedly wonderful. Under Cheng Hui's coercion, all his sword techniques gradually fused together as if the conditions were right, and they were executed with ease. Every single sword technique looked ordinary, yet they were extremely exquisite, and they just happened to be able to restrain Ching Hui's sword light that was like lightning. This Ching Hui was extremely powerful. His inner energy was rich and unending, and his sword energy filled the air, making him feel as if he was in an ocean of sword energy that was everywhere and impossible to defend against. Chu Li, on the other hand, was able to break through the force skillfully. He kept changing the heart technique of his sword technique. It could be the divine light technique, the cloud slashing power, the earth matrix and reincarnation scripture, or even the heavenly demonic power. Under such changes, the layers of sword energy were disrupted and no longer posed a threat to him. Chu Li's speed of wielding his sword gradually increased. The effects of consuming the wind speed pill were starting to show. His speed of wielding his sword was much faster than an ordinary person's. The two of them fought faster and faster. Sword light rose sharply, forming a layer of cold air that enveloped the surroundings. Ching Hui's spirit was focused. There was no other thought in his mind except for faster, 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 and faster. Get it! Chu Li shouted, and a blade shot out from his left hand. The distance was extremely close and the speed was extremely fast. It was impossible to guard against it. Ding! Ching Hui hurriedly raised his sword to block. Chapter 32-48. Stop! The middle-aged man in purple roared. Before he could finish, Chu Li had already pulled his sword back. Ugh! Ching Hui widened his eyes in disbelief. He stared at Chu Li with hatred. That attack was indeed strange. It was not a pure sword technique, but a trick by the young man. He had plotted against him and failed miserably. The middle-aged man in purple roared and rushed toward Chu Li. Chu Li looked at Ching Hui in shock. He was indeed an old man. He was so tenacious. He could withstand the sword force attacking his brain. It seemed like he would not die. His sword flashed and stabbed between his brows again. The middle-aged man's sword had arrived. Ding 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 ding. He stood in front of Ching Hui and desperately waved his sword to block Chu Li so that he could not kill him a second time. Chu Li shook his head and waved his left hand. A cold light shot through Ching Hui. You! The middle-aged man in purple roared angrily. You deserve to die. Chu Li sneered. I don't know if I deserve to die, but all of you deserve to die. Since you want to kill me, be prepared to be killed by me. Chu Li, just you wait. The purple-robed middle-aged man gritted his teeth and glared at Chu Li. His sword gleamed brightly like thousands of pear blossoms blooming, completely enveloping Chu Li. His cold voice rang. You must die, your woman and your family must die. The Sword Moon sect will definitely destroy the public house. Chu Li waved his sword like lightning and blocked the sword flashed. He sneered. Let's see what you're capable of. This is the Sword Moon sect's face. If you surrender, I can spare the public house and your woman, the middle-aged man in purple said coldly. Chu Li laughed. Even a 3-year-old wouldn't believe this. Sword Moon sect is just SOSO. Purple shadows flashed, and more than 100 Sword Moon sect disciples surrounded the gazebo, glaring at him fiercely. Someone went to visit Ching Hui, but unfortunately, Ching Hui was already dead. Elder Cheng is dead. The disciples shouted in grief. Everyone glared at Chu Li with anger as if they wanted to tear him apart. Everyone attacked together. Disciples under 100 years old, step back! The middle-aged man in purple roared. More than 10 middle-aged men shot into the sword light and stabbed at Chu Li with their swords. Their bodies flickered in an unpredictable manner. They cooperated well with each other, each sword aimed at a different part of Chu Li's body, not giving him a chance to dodge. Ding 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 ding. Chu Li's figure was nowhere to be seen. Only the dusky sword light enveloped the surroundings and collided with the rays of sword light, producing a rapid and continuous ringing sound with a strange rhythm. Chu Li felt the pressure on him increase greatly. He could not fight them head-on. These 100-year-old masters were not mediocre, and their swordsmanship was refined. He could handle a few of them, but it would be difficult for him to handle more than 10 of them. Moreover, they had already formed a sword formation with great teamwork. "I'm leaving." Chu Li laughed out loud and suddenly disappeared. The next moment, he appeared outside the sword formation. "Where do you think you're going?" The purple-robed middle-aged man shouted. "Kill him no matter what." Everyone chased after him relentlessly. Chu Li's body moved swiftly as he exited the stone staircase and headed to the side. "Under the formation, don't even think about escaping." The purple-robed middle-aged man raised his voice and shouted, "Surrender now." Chu Li raised his voice and laughed. "You want me to surrender with your abilities? Ha! Let's see how you escape. I'll naturally get out after I kill all of you." How arrogant! No one has been able to do it in the past 1,000 years. "Then I'll be the first." Chu Li laughed as he dodged, not letting the sword formation surround him. Swoosh! His sword light pierced through one of their throats. The sword force instantly surged to the brain, killing him. When he pulled his sword out, he was surrounded by 7 people again. The sword formation was activated again, and this time, the pressure was immense. The 7 people all used their secret skills, and their bodies moved like lightning. The sword light was erratic, and it was difficult to distinguish which was real and which was fake. He was momentarily flustered. Swoosh! His left shoulder was suddenly hit by a sword. However, the tip of the sword slid away. With his inner armor and the sentient menace to protect his body, he managed to deflect the sword. The faces of the 7 people darkened, and the sword light increased in intensity. They did not care about their own consumption, and even if it meant risking their lives, they wanted to kill Chu Li. Chu Li was trapped by them, and he could not escape for a moment. He did not even have time to use God's limbs and divine void light. Swoosh! Swoosh! Chu Li suddenly stabbed one of them in the chest, and his shoulder was also hit. This time, the tip of the opponent's sword pierced his shoulder, and blood immediately gushed out. Chu Li smiled. The sword formation of the 7 people was instantly broken. It was worth it to be hit by a sword. The remaining 6 people formed another sword formation and trapped him again. Chu Li's face darkened. The Sword Moon Sect was indeed the Sword Moon Sect, and he could not underestimate them. The pressure that the 6 people gave him was still immense. Moreover, the 6 of them did not care about their own safety, and attacked him like crazy. They did not care about his sword, and they wanted to destroy everything. Ding, 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 ding. Amidst the clear sounds, more than 10 Sword Moon Sect disciples surrounded him, and they were all masters above 100 years old. Under the observation of the omniscient mirror, he realized that more masters were surging over. Masters above 100 years old were living in seclusion in the distance, and they were rushing over when they heard the news. If this continued, he would be surrounded and killed no matter how powerful he was. He scoffed and said, "Let's stop here for today. See you again." He suddenly disappeared on the spot, and the tip of his sword was hit again. He activated the Great Void Light technique to cross the void, and appeared 100 meters away. Then, he disappeared again before the others could catch up. Chase after him. With the formation, he can't escape. The purple-robed middle-aged man shouted. Everyone immediately split into groups of 6 and searched in different directions. Although there was a formation, Chu Li used the Deva shedding technique to leave. He stood at the peak of another mountain and looked at the Sword Moon Peak from afar. He roared into the sky and laughed loudly. His laughter shook the sky, and the entire Sword Moon Peak could hear it. He stood at the peak and laughed loudly. He felt extremely happy, and he had never felt so happy before. So what if it was the Sword Moon Sect? He would kill when he needed to, and he had no fear. He suddenly stopped laughing and sat down with his legs crossed. He took out the star stone and began to activate the heavenly heart technique. Rays of bright light flashed in front of him, turning into balls of bright light, like the moon reflected in a lake. After a long while, the bright light gradually condensed, turning from the moon in the lake into a bright moon in the sky. Boom! With the sound of thunder, he suddenly woke up and opened his eyes. Heaven and earth became bright and transparent like never before. When he looked up at the sky, it was as if it was right in front of him, and he could touch it with his hand. When he looked down at the ground under his feet had become one. He was the ground and the ground was him. The 10th level of the heavenly heart technique had arrived. He saw dozens of purple figures flashing and approaching, and they were about to arrive. He laughed loudly again and then disappeared. More than 10 purple figures appeared at the peak and looked around, and they were extremely angry. The purple-robed middle-aged man gritted his teeth, and his eyes swept around like lightning. Finally, he sneered, where can he run to? Go to the G dynasty and destroy the E public house. Destroy the E public house. Everyone responded loudly. Chapter 3249. The night was dark and the moonlight shone like water. About 15 miles away from Chongming Town, 20 middle-aged men in purple robes slowly drifted into a pine forest. They were like 20 shadows, their footsteps were soundless, and they drifted into the town like ghosts. Although they were not even 100 years old, their cultivation level was higher than the average 100-year-old master. The group sat in a circle on an open space. The moonlight shone through the branches and their bodies were covered in mottled shadows. Brother Liu, should we attack Chongming Town and attack the High Duke's public house? Someone asked softly. Yes. The middle-aged man in purple robes, Lu Wuji, who was sitting in the middle, nodded slowly and scoffed. There's no need for any tricks or schemes. We'll just destroy them. Because of Chu Li, the E public house's strength has improved tremendously in recent years. We have to be careful. When Chu Li returns, it's inevitable that he'll gather some masters to help, someone said softly. Lu Wuji sneered. What's there to be cautious about? Not everyone is Chu Li. That's true. Someone nodded and smiled. Unless he asks the masters from the Tempest Temple. However, I heard that the Tempest Temple doesn't have a good relationship with Chu Li. They won't help him. I'm guessing that he's hiding in the fairy's capital now that he knows that we're after him. He's certain that we won't dare to go to the fairy's capital. The group remained silent. Although they were powerful, they really did not want to go to the fairy's capital to kill. The Fu dynasty was extremely powerful and looked down on the Ji dynasty. However, the enlightened masters were an exception. The grandmasters from any country were no match for the enlightened masters. The fairy's capital was guarded by the enlightened masters. They could go to the fairy's capital, but they could not kill anyone there. Otherwise, the enlightened masters would not show mercy just because they were from the Fu dynasty's martial arts world. Let's see if he still comes after we destroy the E public house. Lu Wuji sneered. If he's really a cold-blooded and heartless person, we'll admit defeat. Another scoffed. He'll stay in the fairy's capital for the rest of his life. He'll become a useless person. If that's the case, there's nothing we can do. Lu Wuji frowned. A rugged middle-aged man scoffed. Brother Lu, if that's the case, I'll bring a group of people to the fairy's capital and kill him no matter what. Yes. Even if we die, we have to kill him. Someone nodded in agreement. Count me in when the time comes. I don't think there's a need for us. Elder Chun and the others will take action. Some of the elders in the sect had reached the end of their lifespans and were barely holding on. They would soon ascend to the Grandmaster's boundary, and these people would naturally deal with Chu Li, even if they were killed by an enlightened master in the fairy's capital. It doesn't matter if we kill Chu Li or not, we must destroy the E public house first, Lu Wuji said in a low voice. Our disciples can't die in vain. We must bury the public house with them. Senior Brother Lu, are we going to kill everyone after we enter? That's right, no one will be spared. Lu Wuji said coldly, we won't even let a 3-year-old go. We must let the world know the consequences of provoking the Sword Moon sect. We must let the people of the Ji dynasty fear us even more. Yes. Everyone replied in a deep voice. They had long passed the age of being hot-blooded and pure. There was no such thing as justice, only the benefits of the sect. As long as it was for the sect, they would not hesitate to commit murder or arson. Those who offended the sect, no matter how righteous they were, had to be killed. What a vicious heart! Suddenly, a cold laugh rang out. Who is it? Everyone hurriedly stood up and pressed their swords against each other. Chu Li! Lu Wuji shouted. How dare you come? Chu Li's voice seemed to come from all directions. This will be the place where all of you will die. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone felt the scene in front of them suddenly change. It was no longer a forest, but a mountain peak. It was as if they were standing on top of the mountain peak. Their surroundings were empty and there were only deep valleys. Everywhere they looked, there were mountains and dense forests. Oh no, it's a formation! Everyone exclaimed. They knew the power of a formation the best. What was even more strange was how did Chu Li manage to set up a formation without them knowing? They were not deaf or blind. If Chu Li really came close, they would definitely be able to sense it. Be careful, he won't dare to come over, Lu Wuji said in a deep voice. Although he said that, his heart sank. He did not expect to be ambushed by Chu Li. For a grandmaster, this was really unusual. Logically, if there was an ambush here, they would definitely have a sense of danger and avoid it in advance. Chu Li's ability to hide from their instincts was the scariest and the most threatening. Chu Li's voice was heard again. If you can't break the formation, then starve to death. Forgive me for not keeping you company. Goodbye. Chu Li, Lu Wuji shouted. We're not the only ones in the Sword Moon sect. If we die, more powerful masters will come and you'll die a worse death. Chu Li's laughter reached their ears. It was as if they could see a mocking smile on Chu Li's face. Then I'll wait and see if your masters are more powerful or my formation is more powerful. No matter how powerful your formation is, it's still dead. That might not be true. Why don't you surrender? Lu Wuji said coldly. As long as you die, we won't pursue this matter. Chu Li laughed. It's better not to say such a ridiculous thing. All right then, you still have another option, Lu Wuji said. You can join the Sword Moon sect and become a disciple. Chu Li said, I'm not worthy of the Sword Moon sect. Goodbye. Don't you want to experience the profound martial arts of the Sword Moon sect? Lu Wuji quickly asked. Chu Li said, if the Sword Moon sect's martial arts were really profound, I wouldn't have beaten them so badly. It's nothing more than that. It's fine if I don't experience it. That's because our disciples are unworthy and can't cultivate the Sword Moon sect's martial arts well. Lu Wuji scoffed. The martial arts of the Ji dynasty is a level lower than the Fu dynasty. Although you're strong, you're not the best in the Ji dynasty, right? Don't worry about it. Goodbye. Chu Li's voice was faint and faint before it finally disappeared. Everyone looked at Lu Wuji in confusion. They did not know why he changed his mind to recruit Chu Li. Lu Wuji shook his head with a solemn expression. Senior Brother Lu, let's just break the formation. A boorish middle-aged man scoffed. It's just a formation. Luckily, Senior Brother Lu was careful and brought the formation-breaking talisman. Another man smiled and shook his head. However, the power of the formation-breaking talisman is limited. I don't know if it can break this formation. The formation-breaking talisman could break some small formations, but it was useless against medium and large formations. How strong can a formation set up by him alone be? The boorish middle-aged man scoffed. Lu Wuji took out a blood-red jade pendant and sighed. This formation-breaking talisman was not an ordinary treasure. It was a rare treasure that was refined by the Great One Palace. The Sword Moon sect paid a huge price to obtain it, and there were only 5 of them in the sect. They originally planned to use it to break the public house's formation, but they did not expect to use it here. The boorish middle-aged man saw his reluctance and scoffed. Senior brother Lu, as long as we break the formation, we can go to the public house and kill them. There are still many treasures in the public house, enough to make up for this formation-breaking talisman. That's right, let's break the formation. Everyone nodded. Sigh, then let's break the formation. Lu Wuji sighed and threw the dark red formation-breaking talisman into the air. Then, he pricked his index finger with the tip of his sword, and a drop of blood hit the talisman. Chapter 3250. The droplets of blood shot onto the talisman like water droplets falling into a drought, instantly disappearing. The talisman suddenly emitted a bright red light, as if the sun had fallen in front of them. Everyone's eyes hurt, and they involuntarily closed them. When they opened their eyes again, the talisman had already disappeared. The red light spread and formed a huge sphere that enveloped everyone. The sphere was about 100 meters in diameter, and it seemed to be fighting against an invisible force. The red light kept flashing as if it had a life of its own. Everyone was on tenterhooks. It seemed like it would not be easy to break this formation. The red light was fighting against the power of the formation. If the red light was defeated, the formation would not be broken. Pop! There was a strange sound, and everyone felt their vision clear up. Instantly, the scenery changed, and they returned to the pine forest. They immediately sighed in relief, knowing that the formation had been broken. Senior brother Lu, let's go. Lu Wuji shook his head. No matter how Chu Li knew that they would be here and set up an ambush, this was currently the safest place. The formation had just been broken, so it was impossible for him to set up another formation. He glanced at everyone and saw that their faces were gloomy and somewhat shocked. They wanted to run away. Ha ha! Lu Wuji laughed and shook his head. Formation or not, everything is useless against the formation-breaking talisman. If you have the guts, set up another formation. Setting up a formation could not be done in one go. It needed some time, and even the simplest formation would take half a day to set up. Lu Wuji knew that their morale was low, so he needed to boost everyone's courage. The place where they were at must have been set up beforehand, waiting for them to come in. It was scary to think about it. First of all, they did not sense any danger, which meant that there was a treasure that blinded their instincts. Moreover, how could they coincidentally come here? Chu Li had set up a formation beforehand, so he could not have predicted that they would come here to rest, could he? They would never have a traitor, so how did he do it? This was the scariest part. Hee hee. Chu Li's laughter came from all directions again. He laughed loudly. I'd like to see how many formation-breaking talismans you have. As soon as he finished speaking, the scenery in front of everyone changed again. It was as if they were in a sea of bamboos. The surrounding bamboos swayed gently, and when a gust of wind blew, it was like a green sea. As far as the eye could see, there was no end to it. No one knew where to go or when they would be able to walk out of it. Surnamed Chu, you're just relying on formations. Someone shouted. Chu Li's voice rang out faintly, as if it was coming from the clouds. We'll talk after you've broken this formation. Chu Li, don't be too pleased with yourself. Lu Wuji saw the gloomy expressions on everyone's faces and knew that they had lost their spirit. He took a deep breath and loudly said, Did you think that we were the only ones who came here? To tell you the truth, this time, we've split into 3 groups to take care of the House of High Dukes. You've only stopped one of our group. I'm guessing that by now, they've already rushed into the House of High Dukes. There aren't many people left in the House of High Dukes. Chu Li's voice was filled with joy. Thank you for telling me, but you don't have to worry about this. They're trapped in the formation just like you guys. Impossible! Lu Wuji shouted. Chu Li laughed out loud. One of them was you guys, another one was a yellow-faced shorty, and the third one was a fat old man, right? Lu Wuji's expression was as dark as steel. He took a deep breath and said nothing else. The people around them did not look too good either. They knew that Chu Li was right. Since he knew about it and was still calm, the other two groups might really be intercepted by him. Chu Li said, "It's a pity that they didn't have a formation-breaking talisman. They couldn't even break a single formation. What a pity, we've prepared 3 sets of formations for them." 3 sets? Lu Wuji laughed coldly. You're bragging too much. Chu Li laughed out loud. What's there to brag about? You'll know once you try it. It's a pity that you don't have a formation-breaking talisman anymore, so you can only stay here obediently. As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Wuji heard a muffled groan. He turned his head and saw a figure flashing past like a ghost. His 2 junior brothers had already fallen to the ground, their eyes wide open as they held onto their throats. Junior brother Leng! Junior brother Huang! Lu Wuji shouted angrily. Surnamed Chu, you're despicable. Chu Li's laughter could be heard from all directions. It's not despicable for the Sword Moon sect to sneak up on the High Duke's public house, but it's despicable for me to sneak up on you. Is reason on your side? Do you think that once the Sword Moon sect shows up, everyone will submit to you and wait for you to kill them? How naive. As soon as he finished speaking, he flashed again and turned into a phantom that swept past everyone's eyes. Another 2 middle-aged men fell to the ground. Being inside the formation, they seemed to have become blind and deaf. Their amazing intuition as grandmasters had completely disappeared, and they could not sense danger approaching them. By the time they realized that a flying knife was already on their bodies, it was useless even if they had treasured clothing to protect their bodies. In the blink of an eye, Chu Li appeared again. Everyone, back to back, defend with all your might! Lu Wuji shouted. They hurriedly retreated, but they realized that they were the only ones left. It was empty, and there was no one else around. Instantly, they panicked and shouted loudly. Unfortunately, their voices could not be heard by others. They were separated from each other. Even if some of the smarter ones remembered their previous positions and slowly retreated, there was still no one around. Chu Li's shadow drifted past and took care of them one by one. Lu Wuji's martial arts was the strongest among them, and his reflexes were the sharpest. When the flying knife was about to hit his body, he reacted and raised his hand to block his throat. However, he did not expect the flying knife to hit his forehead instead of his throat. The flying knife pierced through his sturdy forehead and came out from the back of his head. Chu Li sighed in relief. This knife was not an energy blade, so it was the most powerful one. This Lu Wuji was quite difficult to deal with, but he was still a distance away from him. With the help of the formation, it was easy to defeat them one by one. Among the 3 groups, this group was the weakest, so they were completely annihilated. As for the other 2 groups, about 10 of them managed to escape, so only about half of them were killed. The other 2 groups were even more cunning. At first, they did not use formation destruction talismans, but at the last moment, they used formation destruction talismans to break out of the encirclement in one go. A white shadow suddenly flashed, and Xiao Qi suddenly appeared. Her clothes were as white as snow, and her face was as fair as jade. Her bright eyes looked around, and when she saw the corpses on the ground, she shook her head and looked up at Chu Li. Then, she sighed and said, "We've become enemies." Chu Li was full of smiles. The power of the perfected 10th level of the Heavenly Heart technique was indeed amazing. With the addition of the Starstone, he accurately predicted their movements and set up a formation in advance to wait for the 3 group. You have to be careful. This time, they'll be anxious and determined to kill you. I'm afraid they'll send their top men, Shao-Chi said. Chu Li smiled and said, Don't worry, their top men won't dare to act recklessly. If they really break into the Ji dynasty, the Tempest Temple's enlightened masters won't just stand by and watch. That's good. Shao-Chi nodded. She knew that Chu Li's current cultivation level was shocking. Not only was he the top young disciple, but he was also one of the top grandmasters. The fact that he was able to escape from the Sword Moon sect in one piece was proof of that. Since the Sword Moon sect's top master was in isolated cultivation, he was lucky enough to escape, which showed how powerful he was. Suddenly, a cold laugh was heard. Two figures slowly appeared. They were both white-haired elders with a ruddy complexion. Their eyes were like lightning and their cultivation level was slightly higher than his. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.